Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast in the Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone. Forgive my voice. My nose has been stuffy for days, and I don't know if it's pollen or if I just caught my brother's cold because he was sick last week, or what it is. But the show goes on nevertheless.
Yeah, and I am your host last time. I want to be the Prince of Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing okay, and also hello to Gary from Nerdrotic if he ever sees this, which he hopefully will, because I plan to send him both halves of our response video to him so that he can rebut anything he feels like rebutting and or be made aware of our counter arguments as and when they are applicable.
Right. So we are okay. So first off, we are going to finish. Hopefully, try to finish. The Doctor Strange 2 is an unmitigated MCU disaster by Nerdrotic, which I will pull up now. And I feel like I should put a disclaimer here. Is again, this is in no way what.
This is not personal. He was just wrong about a lot of very obviously applicable shit, and he needs to be called out for when he is wrong so that he can hopefully improve and not be so wrong in the future. Also, he makes several arguments that do not hold logical water and or don't hold up to scrutiny. So we are here to provide the scrutiny.
Right. Yeah, no one is above criticism. And we try to maintain a kind of unbiased nature here.
Yeah, it's not a matter of your position. It's not a matter of you're on the wrong team, therefore derp. And conversely, it's not about, well, you're on my team, so nothing you do could possibly ever be rationally criticized. No. If you are wrong and you say obviously debunkable shit, or you are logically incoherent and say obviously irrational shit, you will be subject to our special brand of autistic pedantry. And so be it. Especially actually if you're a person that I like, because the people that I like shouldn't make idiots of themselves. So when I catch someone that I like making an idiot of themselves, I try my darndest to do a little bit of philosophical intervention and hopefully render them not as wrong as they once were. Hopefully.
Right. So again, if you want to see the first half of our discussion of this video, please check out Podcast of Storm 166, which is our previous one to this, which is 167.
Yeah, the first roughly 2 hours were a response to the first 8 minutes or so of this video. So there's that. And I don't want to catch anyone criticizing us for basically doing to Nerdrotic what he and several of his cohorts do on EFAP all the live long time. because no one is above criticism when they say obviously wrong or obviously logically incoherent shit.
Right.
And with that, read Banana.
Get your hopes up. Well, America Chavez proves that the multiverse exists by showing Juan and Doctor Strange the dead body of Defender Strange. We also learn in the MCU that dreams are just windows into our multiversal selves. I wonder if there's a multiverse version of yours truly that just enjoys MCU films unquestionably. Someone who's...
Okay, I resent the implication there slightly, in that you don't have to love something unquestionably to find merit in this movie in particular. There are movies that you most definitely do need to be a drone to enjoy. Cough, cough, Captain Marvel, cough, cough, anything to do with Disney Star Wars, cough. Basically everything that that feminist ideology tends to take the floor on. Or frankly, any ideology, because I would make the argument that something like Birds of Prey or Captain Marvel is just as bad as your average PureFlix movie. It's just from the other side. And conversely, most movies produced by PureFlix, your God's Not Dead, your War Rooms, etc., are basically just the Christian version of movies like Captain Marvel or Birds of Prey. Because when you put morality and ideology above consistent characters, interesting worlds, or coherent storytelling, you inevitably end up getting less quality because you're not actually out for quality at that point. You're out for something that adheres to your particular ideology, and your particular ideology is not the center of the goddamn universe, no matter what that ideology happens to be. Therefore, you will inevitably make something less worthy than something that is just out for quality. Ideology and morality be damned. But anyway, Banana.
Sorry, I was checking to see if I accidentally muted myself.
No, you are not muted as far as I can tell. Do you have anything to add at this point?
No, I think we did cover this last week. Not sure, or we started.
No, this was where we ended last time. So it just,
okay. I thought we ended on 8. Okay. This is 8:20. Okay. Ready?
Yep, Banana.
entertained for hours with fidget spinners, balls of string, and laser pointers. Based on the runes Doctor Strange saw on the 2 demons, one in a dream and one in real life, they figure out it's not sorcery, it's witchcraft. And we'll cut to the chase here. Doctor Strange does something incredibly stupid and says something incredibly dumb. He goes to Wanda.
Well, she's the only witch-adjacent person that he knows, and presumably since he knows about the events of West...
Don. He hasn't really given his...
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Oh, yeah, Banana, let him finish the point first.
Wanda, because she knows something about witchcraft. How in the hell would he know that when she just learned it at the very end of WandaVision? Then he says this, which sounds a lot like this.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
No.
Just let us die.
Okay, and this is why I wanted to cut him to the chase on this one. Number one, he knows about the events of Westview, because if he didn't know about the events of Westview, how in the Shanti dissolving fuck would he know about how to have an opinion on it? He clearly knows about the events of WandaVision. And in fact, if you actually look at some of the behind-the-scenes interviews with regards to WandaVision, the commercials from WandaVision, at least the majority of them, were supposed to be Doctor Strange's attempt to wake her up. That's why the Nexus being antidepressant commercial was a thing. The only commercial that wasn't explicitly created by Doctor Strange was the Yo Magic Yogurt Shark commercial, which was something that Agatha produced for Billy, because she needed them to access their powers to wake Wanda up effectively, and thus she was trying to wake him up. Also, because Billy himself is a very powerful warlock, for lack of a better term. Therefore, if she successfully drained Wanda of her magic, she would have probably gone and tried to siphon off at least Billy's powers as well, if not Tommy's, because as we saw when Agatha created Ralph Boner, quote unquote, or fake Pietro, she was able to give him a surrogate for Quicksilver's powers using her magic. And if we're going by the lore of the MCU, if Wanda's powers were amplified by the Mind Stone and were initially witchcraft that she didn't know about, i.e., if her powers were derived from magic rather than genetic mutation in this universe, which I'm fine with, because she's always been more of a witch than a mutant anyway, then that means that Quicksilver's powers are more from him being a latent warlock than from him being a mutant. Thus, if she can replicate Quicksilver's powers using her magic, then presumably she can also suck them away, and therefore Tommy's powers as a speedster would also be in her sights, assuming that she actually succeeded in taking away Wanda's power. But nevertheless, the TLDR here, the TLDR, is Strange obviously knows about what happened in WandaVision, and he obviously knows about the tussle between Wanda and Agatha Harkness, and therefore she knows that, and therefore he knows that Wanda has had dealings with witchcraft. Not to mention that once he became a sorcerer, he probably put two and two together himself and realized that Wanda was a witch but didn't realize it. And then when Westview happened, he went, oh, she became aware of it. Good for her. And that's why it makes sense later for, in this scene, Doctor Strange says to her, why would I go to the insect-themed superheroes or the guy who can just shoot arrows really well when I could go to one of the most powerful magic users on the planet? Because at this point, he knows that she knows that her powers are primarily witch-based and were just amplified by the Mind Stone. It's very simple. He knows about Westview. He has a rather stupid or perhaps overly charitable opinion of it because he's trying to see his former ally in the best light that he can, which is entirely consistent with his character. That's exactly what he did with Spider-Man 2 in No Way Home. He tries to give Peter a leg up by using the runes of Kafkal, and he gets mad at Peter when it becomes obvious to him that he didn't check with the admin board first. And then he proceeds to take it easy on Peter in the mirror dimension later when they're fighting, because he knows that Peter is still a good kid and is just in his opinion, making a mistake. So that's why he didn't go full 1v1 versus Thanos on Spider-Man. And likewise, he probably understands the notion, at least from his perspective, that for the most part, during the events of WandaVision, she didn't realize what she was doing. And then once she was made aware by Agatha of what she was doing, she had a momentary lapse where she tries to protect her family and then makes the right choice, i.e. the best choice she could make at this point, and sacrifice her family and children and also free Westview. That's probably what he meant when he said, you put it right in the end. Granted, again, just for the record, yes, that is very stupid. Yes, he should have been there the second that she threw that hex up to try and talk her out of it, just like they originally intended for him to do in the early stages of writing WandaVision. But because of feminist morality, they decided against that for the end of WandaVision, but nevertheless kept the fact that he obviously still knew about it because He's a very powerful sorcerer and also knows Wanda personally to some extent. So yeah, he clearly knows how she knows about witchcraft, and he's probably just relieved that she now knows that she's a witch so that he doesn't have to explain it to her, frankly. Most likely. Banana.
Sir. Oh, also, hello, Dragon Turtle.
Yep. How are you doing? Banana.
There's a lot of blood on Monica Rambeau's hands. Remember in Pirates of the Caribbean 2 when they killed the Kraken off screen? Everyone thought that was lame. Well, apparently, Wanda has now been completely corrupted by the Darkhold off screen. Turns out Wanda is the one who sent the demons after America Chavez, and it turns out Dr.
Okay, because the events of the MCU take place in something resembling real time, obviously excluding the 5-year time skip. And according to the extant MCU timeline, there are 18 months between the end of WandaVision, which includes the post-credit scene, and the events of Doctor Strange 2. So she's been sitting in a cabin, presumably alone, listening to the Darkhold whisper to her for 18 months. So yeah, she's not going to be okay. Now, and granted, given that you know and I know that she was very villainous at the end of WandaVision to begin with, and that she was rightfully guilt-ridden even as she flew away from Westview, the Darkhold probably also found a very fertile ground because she was already psychologically vulnerable and already on edge because, holy shit, I accidentally mind controlled the whole town for several weeks and had to create my own family and then lose that very same own family shortly thereafter. Not to mention, she might even feel guilty about what she did to Agatha at the end of WandaVision. Although, maybe less so, because honestly, I didn't think Agatha was that mean to her, frankly. All things I mean, she helped her a lot, and she gave Wanda a low-tier rundown on the fundamentals, as she put it, which, goddamn, I love Agatha so much with all of that shit. But nevertheless, she might even feel guilty about the whole Agatha thing. So, like, she's already on edge, she's already traumatized, she's already guilty, and she's just barely holding it together at the end of WandaVision because she has had some kind of closure. So, you take somebody who's already in a psychologically vulnerable state, and then you isolate them for 18 months with an evil book that whispers, you can literally have everything you've ever wished for. Just because you created the children and Vision in this universe doesn't mean they don't exist elsewhere. Here, let me show you all the multiverses where you have these children, because as it turns out, you're the only one in this entire multiverse who doesn't have them. Doesn't that make you feel even more aggrieved? Here, let's summon some demons to take you to the one person in all of reality that has the power to take you to them. It's bitching about Wanda being corrupted off screen is a little bit like bitching about how Doctor Strange gets progressively better at magic in between all of his appearances, because we already know, and it was already established in Doctor Strange's first movie, that you get good at that shit by study, practice, years of it, to quote the line from the movie. And he'd only been studying, according to Scott Derrickson, for a year as of the end of Doctor Strange, so he obviously gets better in between movies, and therefore obviously has more spells in between movies. Well, in the same vein, we saw Wanda opening the Darkhold at the end of the post-credit scene of WandaVision, and there are 18 months between the events of WandaVision and the events of Multiverse of Madness, so obviously she's not going to be okay. Banana.
No.
Strange just told her exactly where she was, at Kamataj in the country of Tibet, with Wong, and it's all about to go down. The Scarlet Witch wants to steal America Chavez's ability to travel through the universe freely so she can be with her non-existent children. Doctor Strange's role in his own film is to simply protect.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I have something.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. To my knowledge, and granted, it has been some time since I have seen Multiverse of Madness. Before Wanda plays her hand by saying America Chavez's name before Strange tells her it, he just assumes she is still on the good guy's side.
Yeah. Because from his perspective, she made a mistake in the events of WandaVision. She rectified that mistake as best as she could, and then she endeavored to become more knowledgeable about her powers, which I'm sure meets with the highest degree of approval from Doctor Strange, because he understands the notion that power without knowledge is a very, very bad thing.
Right. Okay. All right. And Karmataz, which I assume since after the snap, I don't know why people call it the blip.
Mm-hmm.
So fucking stupid.
Yeah, why it wasn't just called the snap, I will never know. That was a wasted branding potential. But.
Right. I would assume everyone knows. Well, everyone knows who Doctor Strange is now.
Well, that's what we see as of the evidence in the movie. Everyone knows, at the very least, that he was involved in the events of Infinity War.
Right. And thus, I would assume everyone knows that right. Yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Did it pick back up?
No.
Okay, well, the upshot, and I think what Brainstormer was kind of trying to get at as well, is up until the, oh, you didn't mention her name, did you? No, I didn't. Oh, well, recreating another hex now that I knew what I was doing was easy, but lying is still the son of a bitch, and then reveals, the Garden of Death, as I've taken to calling it. Up until that point, there's no reason for him to assume that she's gone to the dark side. He should have acknowledged more fervently that she did make a mistake during the event of WandaVision in Westview, but I'm going to be somewhat charitable and say that since for 98% of the events in Westview she didn't consciously realize what she was doing, and then once she became aware of what she was doing, she did her best to undo it, and only stopped temporarily to look after her children that she obviously had grown emotionally attached to, and also her Mind Stone energy constructed vision. In his mind, it's a sucky situation, and she should feel bad for doing it, but she at least did her best to try and put it as right as she could put it. And it's not like she then went on a rampage and tried to do it to 1,000 other towns or something after the events of WandaVision. From what he could tell, she just buggered off to a cabin in the middle of nowhere for a bit and learned more about her powers, which there's nothing immoral in that section of time. you could make an argument for Westview, but like I said, for 90% of the event of WandaVision, she wasn't aware of what she was doing, and then when she was made aware of what she was doing, she tried to stop it. So yes, she has a little bit of red in her ledger to make a reference to the Black Widow meme, but she did her best to try and scrub it out, and also, according to what Strange has knowledge of at this particular point, she's a powerful magic user who knows about witchcraft because she's had dealings with Agatha Harkness, and she's had experience being a superhero, and there's no reason for him to assume that, mistakes aside, she's not still trying to be a decent person. But then, 5 minutes later, when the big reveal drops and he sees the Darkhold and nearly shits himself because that thing is evil concentrate, obviously his opinion of her changes in that short exchange quite a lot. But there's no reason why he wouldn't go to the one person he knows personally to some degree that A, is a very powerful witch in her own right, B, now has some understanding of witchcraft, and C, has experience being an Avenger. It makes perfect sense for him to go to her not knowing that A, she has the Darkhold, and B, it's her fault in the context of why America Chavez is even running between universes. Banana.
One sec. No.
The girl who is the key to everything, from the bad woman with the bad MacGuffin book, and the only way to fight her is with the good MacGuffin book. Get it? Because Sam Raimi had a book in Evil Dead, and there's books in here, and it's directed by Sam Raimi, except the big difference is the Evil Dead series is good, and this isn't. So
Holy fucking hell. I didn't think you could piss me off any more than you did when you said, well, he was the Sorcerer Supreme at the end of his first movie, when he categorically was fucking not. But Gary, you yourself in this video made a point about how people who are unfamiliar with the comics trying to adapt things from the comics should either A, get familiar with the comics, or abstain from doing so. You yourself made that point, and it is a perfectly valid point. But if you are going to open that door of comic book familiarity is necessary for the people adapting the thing, then you don't get to lampshade the inclusion of the Darkhold and the Book of the Vishanti in a Doctor Strange movie as, oh, you're just trying to rip off Sam Raimi and make references to Sam Raimi. Because you should damn well know, if you know anything at all about Doctor Strange or the mystical side of the Marvel Universe in general, that the two most significant texts in the Marvel multiverse, in basically every Marvel multiverse that we've ever been to that has, a significant magic component, the two most important books for the mystical side of the Marvel Universe are the Book of the Vishanti on the good side of things, and the Darkhold on the bad side of things. This is not something that Sam Raimi invented. It's not something that Marvel created specifically to rip off Sam Raimi's Evil Dead. It is something from the comics that Sam Raimi himself was probably a pretty big fan of, and Kevin Feige was a pretty big fan of, so they obviously included it in the movie. In fact, my biggest question at the end of the first Doctor Strange was, where the fuck are the Darkhold and the Book of the Vishanti? Thank you very fucking much. Not to mention, why haven't we met the actual entities behind the Book of the Vishanti, namely the Vishanti themselves, yet? Which is still a question that I have at the end of this movie, by the way, because trying to make a Doctor Strange movie without at some point alluding to the actual Vishanti who give him the majority of his energies that he worked with to create his spells is kind of like trying to create a Green Lantern TV show without ever referencing Oa or the Guardians of the Universe. And trying to make a Doctor Strange movie that doesn't even allude to the Book of the Vishanti and the Darkhold being the dueling sort of tomes of good and evil in that mythos is a little bit like trying to create a Green Lantern series without alluding to the other colors in the emotional spectrum. So, if anything, my only complaint with the Darkhold and the Book of Vishanti here is they should have taken it further. We should have actually seen Chthon, and we should have actually met the Vishanti once and for fucking all. But, I guess we have to save some things for the third movie, and presumably it's going to be the trial of the Vishanti, like it is in the comics, that creates a new Sorcerer Supreme, and that's how Doctor Strange is in the third movie going to get his title, which is fine. But you certainly don't get to portray the existence of the Darkhold and the Book of the Vishanti as some kind of cynical ploy. It is not just canon to the comics, it is fundamental canon to the mystical side of the Marvel Universe. You yourself brought up that if you don't have certain familiarity with the comics, you probably shouldn't be talking out of your ass about shit from the comics. Well, sir, be prepared to be hoisted by your own fucking petard then. Because if you're too much of a normie to know about the Darkhold in the Book of the Vishanti, that is a you problem, not a movie problem. Sorry, that pissed me off. Moving on. But
Okay.
Well, there's a big showdown at Comitage where dozens die for the girl who's the key to everything, all for some children who never existed. And one of the biggest flaws in this film is how Disney Marvel bends over backwards to try to make the Scarlet Witch sympathetic, which she simply isn't. Now we're off.
Right.
okay, again, she's not the girl who is the key to everything. She is a living MacGuffin. And given the annoying, bitchy, standoffish, ball-busting personality that she had in the comics that is very similar to MCU Carol Danvers, it's better for her to be a living MacGuffin who is uncertain of herself and actually needs protection than it is for her to be the Spanglish-spouting Deus Ex Machina that she is in the comics. So stop treating one of the benefits of this movie in that they minimized America Chavez's involvement as much as possible and also fixed her personality as though it's a negative, because the alternative was have her in all of her ball-busting, standoffish, prick glory and basically mimicking Captain Marvel. So, call me crazy, but I'm gonna give it to them that given that they decided they needed to do America Chavez, which I agree they shouldn't have even bothered, but since they decided they needed to do something with America Chavez, it's better for the movie and for the character in general, and also for my sanity, they sanded off the rough edges of her character by not turning her into an overly confident, arrogant little shit who spouts Spanglish all the fucking time, into a confused but street smart kid who's bounced from multiverse to multiverse over the course of her life, and therefore feels uncertain about herself and can't control her powers.
Right.
And incidentally, once again, the thing about the kids, yes, they were fictional. They were constructs of Wanda's own mind. But let's take that notion of yours, they were fictional so it doesn't matter, and apply it to something that you care about. Let's say you woke up tomorrow and everyone you loved, or everything you ever loved, turned out to be some kind of schizophrenic delusion of your own mind. Would you be able to just shake it off and move on from that? Would you be able to go, well, I guess everything I loved in life was fictional, and that's okay. I guess I can just move on. No, you fucking would not. No one would. You take everything that someone loves, and you say, by the way, you made that up. It's fiction, and it never existed. And you're gonna really fuck someone's head up. So the kids being fictional in this universe really isn't material, especially when you consider that even if Wanda was somehow able to be okay with that, along comes the Darkhold and says, by the way, your universe is the odd one out. You have these children and they're actually real in literally every other freaking universe. Again, let's give you the powers of the Scarlet Witch. And let's, again, have it set up so that basically everything you've ever cared about is a schizophrenic delusion of your own mind. And then let's send in the Darkhold, a whispering, and go, and have it go, you realize your universe is the odd one out. You have these in every other universe and they're real. Tell me you wouldn't at least try to go and see your kids in another universe if they happened to actually exist in that universe. Tell me you wouldn't, because I wouldn't believe you if you did. Banana.
No.
To the multiverse of madness, into the Illuminati dimension, and this is where the keys start jangling, and then Disney Marvel drops them. And spoilers, they repeat the conclusion of this film over and over again. Wanda, your kids never existed. Wanda, the kids that are out there aren't yours. In the Illuminati dimension, we get some more.
Yes, but up until the point of this movie's conclusion, when somebody says that to her, she shakes it off because it's a purely hypothetical thing to her. It's like trying to win an argument on a technicality from her perspective. She might even know consciously that in this universe they are fictional, but she's been warped by the Darkhold for 18 months, and for those 18 months, the Darkhold has been whispering to her, but I can take you to a universe where they do exist. I can show you that in literally every other universe where you exist, they exist anyway. I can show you that you're the odd one out, Wanda. How does that make you feel, Wanda? Want to summon up some demons so I can take you to the one person who has the power to take you where you want to go so that you can actually have them? Again, it's one of the things I liked about her arc, and it actually gives more credence to Doctor Strange's arc as well, is he tells her exactly what you're saying. He tells her they were created from magic, and also even if you found your way to a universe where they existed, their mother would also probably exist, and you would have to kill another version of yourself to get to them. He tells her all of that ahead of time, but she shakes it off because she's in Tiger Mom mode. She's in you're trying to keep me from my children mode. And so she shakes it off and says, well, if I have to kill another version of me, it sucks to be her, but I'm still going to get my fucking kids. However, when she's actually faced with the real world consequences of that, when she's actually faced with trying to kill a version of herself and with her own children staring up in hatred at her, and throwing things at her and stuff, she can't do it. It's meant to evoke the difference between being able to do harsh things in theory, but not actually having the chutzpah to do them when you're faced with the real world consequences. I'm pretty sure we've all at some point said to accomplish the things I want to do, I would let the world burn. I would kill as many people as I have to. But the difference is, it's kind of like Monday morning quarterbacking. Everyone who's ever been to a bar knows that one dude who, when he gets drunk, starts going, well, if I was in this fight with this person, I would kick their fucking ass. Like, there are plenty of people who will get drunk and watch a like UFC fight at a bar and go, oh, that guy's not so tough. I would totally kick their ass if it happened in real life and da 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 da. But there's a difference between being able to do something in theory and being actually faced with, okay, this person is in front of you now. Your opportunity to do that thing you were boasting about is in front of you now. What are you going to do? And just like that dude who has the, the beer goggles of, I'm the strongest person ever on, when you actually call them on their bullshit and say, you're not that tough, dude, what the fuck are you playing at? Let's fight here and now, and we'll see if you can actually do it. Just like that person shrinks away and goes, oh shit, I'm not as tough as I thought I was. Fuck me. Wanda is on full tilt to get what I want, I'll let the world burn mode. But when she's actually faced with, okay, here's the world, let it burn, Wanda. Let your own kids hate you forever, Wanda, or mind control them into not hating you, Wanda. She can't fucking do it. And it's better for Strange's arc because it means he knew this was coming the whole fucking time. If he hadn't have said anything, I would actually be more pissed off at him because it means that he actually was put on the back seat in his own movie. But instead what happens is he tries to warn her in the beginning of the movie. He follows, he gets chased by her throughout the entire course of the movie. And then he gets to sit back and watch as everything he told her ends up being right. And he gets to encourage America Chavez to hold back so that this can actually play out, because despite everything, Strange still cares about Wanda. He still knows her personally. He still understands her pain. And so he doesn't want this to escalate any further than it has to. He just wants to let it play out. Now, granted, this could have been driven home a little bit more with Strange saying something to the effect of, I told you. But part of his arc in this movie is learning to let go of control and to be more humble. So part of that is he has the satisfaction of seeing everything he said would play out, and doesn't say, I told you so, no matter how gratifying that would be, personally. Banana.
Right.
Exposition including America Chavez's origin, where a lot of people, including yours truly, laughed out loud. Origin from the comics, but it's so bad and so intersectional feminist that they've already retconned it. She's from a dimension called Utopia. She has two lesbian mothers, and when she was young, she got stung by a bee, opened up a portal, and then they got sucked through. That's what.
Okay. Take this argument you just made about it was so bad they had to retcon it, and look at the movie again. Because that argument of it was so bad they had to retcon it, is exactly the argument I will make in defense of this movie. Rather than keeping her ball-busting, overconfident, arrogant, Spanglish-spouting ways from the comics, they sanded off her rough edges and made her a more vulnerable, more three-dimensional character, like you do. Now, granted, the comics should have done this to begin with, if we were living in better times where the writers actually fucking knew what they were doing, but it's better for the MCU to look at the comics and go, this character's utterly unlikable. How the fuck are we going to make this character work? I know, we'll sand off the rough edges of her personality and have her actually be a somewhat vulnerable character. Yay. Like, it's funny, you're using arguments to criticize this movie that I just used to give it credit. It's very hilarious to me. Moving on. Banana.
No.
What happens when there isn't a man around. She learned this by walking by the exposition. I'm sorry, the Memory Cafe.
No.
Your computer fucking up? Brainstormer? I'm betting his computer fucked up.
No, it was going to an ad, so.
Oh, okay. Which I'm sure Gary doesn't actually get AdSense for, because he's on YouTube's blacklist, so he doesn't get AdSense probably. But
right. Okay. Let me start that back again. There we go. Huh?
Suck through. That's what happens when there isn't a man around. She learned this by walking by the the Memory Cafe. Meanwhile, in Kamatage, one of Wong's students destroys the Darkhold. Turns out the Darkhold is a copy, and Scarlet Witch forces Wong to take her where it was written. And another reminder, the perceived through line.
I don't really have anything to say.
Yeah, the Darkhold being the copy of a temple for Cthon is a fairly consistent thing in the comics, too. I don't know why everyone had such a problem with that, considering that for most of human history, literacy wasn't that common, so it would make sense that a book that ancient would be transcribed from something. Banana.
Yeah.
Of this film does not run through the titular character, Doctor Strange. It runs through the antagonist, Wanda, who can dreamwalk, which is possessing the body of someone in another universe. In this case, it's herself. Back in the Illuminati universe, Doctor Strange and America Chavez decide to visit the other Doctor Strange, but
Okay. Enough of this, because this is seriously pissing me off now. Their arcs run concordantly because the movie is trying to mirror their arcs, is the thing. That's why in the Garden of Doom, when Strange says, Wanda, you can't kill a child just to be with other children, because obviously she's thinking of killing America Chavez and taking her powers to get to her kids. And Wanda's argument is exactly the fucking same as Strange's argument to both Peter in No Way Home and Defender Strange's at the beginning of the movie, i.e., in the grand calculus of the multiverse, I'm actually doing reality a favor because this girl could be dangerous if we let her keep her powers for too long. And that's supposed to highlight to Doctor Strange the slippery slope of these calculus-like decisions, these detached calculus decisions, i.e., sacrificing people for the greater good may be circumstantially useful in the short term, but what's stopping a villain like a Darkhold corrupted Scarlet Witch from taking that very same mentality and using it to justify, I don't know, genocides, repeated murder, any of the things that the greater good has been used to justify in history. You know, that old chestnut, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's exactly what it's fucking about, because the idea of we're just murdering this child for the greater good, we're just letting these people die for the greater good, maybe even circumstantially true, but it's not a good moral standard to keep up, because one person may be justified in one situation for doing that, but all it takes is one person misinterpreting that standard or applying it to things that don't make sense, and whoops, now we're in Nazi Germany and there are fucking concentration camps everywhere, or whoops, we're in the middle of fascist Italy or communist Russia during the Holodomor. You know, that's what the movie is trying to convey to Strange. It's saying, we'll take your argument, Doctor Strange. We'll take that argument of in the grand calculus of the multiverse, and we'll feed it back to you to show you just how fucked up a standard it is. It might have been useful in one instance, but you can't treat every single instance as one exception, because if every single instance of that mentality becomes my one exception, I'm only doing it this one time to do for the greater good. Da, 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 da. If you do that, pretty soon, every time becomes the one exception, and then whoops, you're committing a genocide for the greater good. Derp. Yeah, but I got off point. But the point of the movie, by splitting the screen time fairly evenly between Wanda and Strange, is to mirror their arcs. She wants her happiness at the expense of the universe. Strange is thinking about that because of the thing with Christine. Wanda is using the very same in the grand calculus of the multiverse justification as Strange has used not once but twice now. And that's not even counting the one time he also did it in another universe. She's thinking, I'm just using this dark magic to get something good, so it must be justified. And of course, later on in the movie, Strange makes the choice of, I'm taking the burden of this dark magic onto myself to save the world or save reality, so it must be justified, which is setting up a dark turn for Doctor Strange, and her being overly arrogant for basically the entire movie is exactly mirroring Doctor Strange's overwrought arrogance and his need to be humble. The difference being, when Wanda makes all of these rationales, she follows them through to delusional, crazy, fucked up ends. And when Strange is actually faced with, oh, this is how I sound to other people, he internalizes the lesson, becomes more humble, becomes less greater good oriented and less grand calculus oriented, and more thinking in terms of, to make a reference to something that Captain America said to Vision in Endgame or Infinity War, we don't trade lives, i.e., just because it sounds good in my greater good in my universal calculus sense doesn't mean, well, I'm only letting these people die for the grand calculus of the multiverse and my greater good, is in any way a rational position, no matter how circumstantially useful it might be. Also worth noting, because I agree, he was more justified in Infinity War than he has been in No Way Home or in this movie. In Infinity War, he actually had the time stone. He had the means to bounce through alternate timelines and check and see what the options were. He doesn't have the time stone anymore, but he still has the proclivity of my greater good and my grand calculus of the multiverse. So now that he doesn't have the ability to check up on alternate timelines, he can't be certain 100% that what he's doing is the only way. He was able to do that in Infinity War because he had the time stone and he checked 14,605 timelines and only found one where they won. So he was more justified because he had more data in Infinity War because of the time stone. But he doesn't have the time stone anymore, so he can't double check alternate realities anymore. So that it's the only way my grand calculus proclivity he has is now biting him in the ass, because he still has the proclivity, but he doesn't have the resource to actually double check and make sure that he's right.
Oh yeah, Giant Turtle brings up something interesting here. So didn't he explicitly say that all sorcerers could do that, and it is always an alternate version of yourself? Why is he saying so matter-of-factly, like it is only her? She happened to choose herself, and no explanation for any of it.
Say that again. I don't think it registered to me what he was saying.
Didn't it explicitly say that all sorcerers could do that, and it is always an alternate version of yourself? Why is he saying so matter-of-factly, like it is only her? She happened to choose herself.
Oh, okay. The thing about Wanda dreamwalking and what Gary was saying. Yeah, that is a thing, but they do sort of imply that you need either dark magic in general or specifically the Darkhold to do it.
I think it's specifically a spell in the Darkhold itself. So
yeah, which it might have gotten transplanted to some other book somewhere, because funny story in the comics, the Book of the Cagliostro, the time magic book that they referenced in the first movie, that first showed up in Marvel Premiere, by the way. According to the comics, Cagliostro was actually inspired, or he based a lot of the stuff he put in the Book of Cagliostro from the Darkhold. He was adapting spells from the Darkhold and put them in the Book of Cagliostro, which does explain why the Dormammu spell is in there, funnily enough. But that's interesting for another day. So yeah, you can. It is a spell from the Darkhold, and you could hypothetically find it in other books, which does bring up the question of why didn't Wong just say you can find it in other books? because at the very least, the Darkhold and or Castle Darkhold have a explicitly corrupting influence, whereas if she got it from another book, it would have just been the spell. And it still would have been risky because of the consequences of dreamwalking that we find out later, but it at least wouldn't have had the pushing her further into the darkness aspect. Anyway, Banana.
Oh no.
He's dead, and they find out that the Sorcerer Supreme is Baron Mordo, who was part of the Illuminati. And yes, let's finally get to this scene because this is the single worst part of the movie. America and Doctor Strange run into Christine Palmer, and the Illuminati dimension is designated 838, and they designate Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I have no disagreements with him here. I will agree that this is probably the worst scene in the movie. But my issue is, why the fuck is this here in a Doctor Strange movie? I would have preferred if none of the multiverse stuff was in here. Because the thing about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and why I like it more than I thought I would, is because I always said, since this movie was announced, that they're going to try and focus way too much on the multiverse aspect and not enough on the Lovecraftian part that's implied by the of madness part. That's a reference to a John Carpenter movie called, I think it's At the Mouth of Madness, and then obviously an H.P. Lovecraft story called At the Mountains of Madness. However, Sam Raimi, God bless him, seems to have been on my side. The most interesting part of Multiverse of Madness is not the multiverse part, it's the of madness part. It's the Lovecraftian part. Because the Lovecraftian part of the Marvel Universe, the magical side of the Marvel Universe, is exactly the part of the Marvel Universe that Doctor Strange should be dealing with. He shouldn't be dealing with parallel universes and alternate timelines. He should be dealing with different planes of existence, netherworlds, alternate dimensions, and so on and so forth. Like, Doctor Strange belongs more in something like Flatland or Wonderland, now that Disney has the rights to Alice in Wonderland, than he does in a parallel universe. Parallel universes and alternate timelines was always Reed Richards' thing. Reed Richards in the comics was the first person to discover the multiverse, as in parallel universes and alternate timelines, because that's the scientific part of the multiverse. Doctor Strange deals with the magical side of it, which is the parallel dimensions and netherworld side, not the but yeah, my solution to this being the worst part of the movie would just be cut out all the multiverse shenanigans shit and just focus on alternate dimensions. But I think his contention is that this movie should have been more multiverse focused, and I fundamentally disagree. The most interesting part of Multiverse of Madness is not multiverse, it's of madness. Because Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there could have been a happy medium between the multiverse and madness if the Illuminati wasn't basically cameos and stuff. And it was more so like a council of reeds, but with Sorcerer Supremes of various universes.
That might have been interesting. Although, quite frankly, I'm fine with the movie as it exists. I just wish that they had stopped hyper focusing on parallel universes and alternate timelines and focused more on the planes of existence and netherworld that Doctor Strange actually has business dealing with. But the thing is, and this is one of the things that I think bit this movie in the ass, but not because it made the movie worse, but because people didn't know what they were getting, largely because the marketing was so multiverse focused. This movie is not a multiverse movie. This movie is a Lovecraftian horror comedy that has aspects of the multiverse in it. And that's why I disagree with people like Odin's Movie Blog when he says Everything Everywhere All at Once was a better multiverse movie. And I disagree with him on the grounds that, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness wasn't a multiverse movie. It was a Lovecraftian horror comedy that had to have aspects of the multiverse in it because Marvel's, mandate with things like Loki and What If and shit. And quite frankly, I kind of wish that Sam Raimi had just told Marvel to go fuck themselves with regards to the multiverse stuff and just doubled down on more Lovecraftian shit. But if we absolutely have to have multiverse stuff in it, I'm glad that it wasn't the focus. I'm glad that the Lovecraftian horror comedy aspects were the focus, with some multiverse stuff tacked onto it. If you want to compare this movie to better movies, a more accurate comparison would be to say something like Trick or Treat is a better movie than this movie, or the first Hellboy is a better movie than this movie, or Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3 are better than this movie, because those are the kinds of movie that this movie was trying to be. It was trying to be a Lovecraftian horror comedy with some multiverse shenanigans thrown in, or better yet, Happy Death Day 2. You could make the argument, but you can't make the argument that Everything Everywhere All at Once is better than this movie, because this movie is not trying to be a multiverse movie. It's trying to be a Lovecraftian horror comedy with some multiverse stuff tacked on. But
Okay. Just for the record, we are going to call it at 9:30.
Okay.
Yeah, just in case we don't get
done.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep my interruptions to a minimum. It's just the more he talks, the more I feel like bashing my head against a wall.
Yeah. Banana.
As being from the 616. Bullshit. The 616 is the Marvel Comics universe. The MCU is supposed to be the 199999, showing you they could give a crap about comic book fans. The Illuminati is Captain Carter, Captain Marvel, Baron Mordo, Black Bolt, Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with him entirely here. Making the MCU 616 is stupid. Unless they're supposed to imply that the cinematic universes are in a different multiverse entirely, or a different branch of the multiverse, and this just happens to be the 616 of this multiverse. But yeah, I agree that the correct course of action would just to call it 19999, as the MCU has been called in the comics for years, and just call it whatever. Although, to be fair, this is a multiverses understanding of the multiverse, i.e., this is not the main MCU universe. So maybe when Doctor Strange gets home and does more research on the multiverse, he realizes that there are more multiverses and decides to call it 1999, or one followed by a bunch of nines.
Right. Sorry, this Dragon Soul said something interesting here. It seems like multiverses are in the same camp as things like resurrection and time travel. It doesn't need to be, but writers just make things more confusing and meaningless when writers include it. I could agree with time travel and maybe resurrection. It really depends. I like the idea of multiverses. I just think any idea really, it depends on the execution, and more often than not, it is. It's no. What's the word? There've been no good examples of it. No one's really thought how to.
Yeah, nobody seems to know how to make multiverses work. Generally, and I would agree with you. I think that multiverses tend to just screw up with it. But to be once again fair, I don't care if there are parallel universes and alternate timelines in the MCU. I just don't think Doctor Strange is the kind of person who should be dealing with them. Given that we're doing Fantastic Four in 5 minutes anyway, have Reed be the one to discover the multiverse, just like he has always been in the comics. Because let the scientists deal with the science-based problems, and let the sorcerer deal with the sorcery problem. Magical cures for magical ails, as the old saying goes. I.e., Doctor Strange doesn't deal with parallel universes and alternate timelines. He deals with netherworlds, alternate planes of reality, and conceptual planes of existence. not parallel universes or alternate timelines. That's my main issue. My main issue is if you want to call Doctor Strange's dimension hopping a multiverse, you can, for simplicity's sake, I suppose, but you have to make some effort to distinguish between the metaphysical multiverse that sorcerers deal with and the scientific multiverse of parallel universes and alternate timelines that people like Ant-Man or Reed Richards would deal with. And that's the other thing. Ant-Man is already established, so have him deal with the weird, highbrow theoretical physics / quantum realm shit, because he's already doing it.
Okay. Trying to or maybe there's no agreement on labeling for multiverses.
Yeah, that's my thought. My thought is everyone, when they discover the multiverse, just picks arbitrary numbers, and nobody can agree on what the fuck the multiverse is. I mean, if we truly wanted to get like an objective or as close to objective as we can be bothered to get perspective, you'd have to literally like ask the Watcher or the Living Tribunal what he calls each universe.
I've actually written down an idea for a multiverse, which I think works best on the idea of like effectively since it's technically an infinite number, basically it's just labeling as much as you can.
Yeah. And eventually, I imagine you just run out of numbers and start using like kind of like military designations. They'd probably just start using like Bravo and Alpha and all those stuff instead of numbers, or those kind of things mixed with numbers, maybe.
Or colors,
Yeah.
Anyway, let's. Yeah.
That's banana.
Yeah, banana.
Black Bolt, Mr. Fantastic, and Professor X. That would be really cool if this wasn't a universe where everyone's IQ was room temperature. Or maybe that's just the writers. Meanwhile, Wong and Wanda go to Wonder Door. Say that 3 times fast. Where the Darkhold is all over the walls and
yeah, I have no objections here. Banana.
Yeah.
Conveniently, it's a throne room for the Scarlet Witch so she can dream more. The 838 universe, Doctor Strange didn't die defeating Thanos. He was executed by the Illuminati because he was playing around with the Darkhold and caused an incursion, which apparently can happen when anybody travels to another universe. It confuses reality, and then...
Well, yeah. When people start popping between universes, it messes with causality quite a bit, I would imagine. Or maybe it just brings the 2 universes that are being traveled between closer and then makes it more likely that they're going to crash into each other. But as it happens, in regards to the, conveniently it's a throne room for the Scarlet Witch thing, it's because, both in the comics and here, Wanda is Chthon's chosen avatar. And it was established in WandaVision that there's an entire chapter of the Darkhold specifically devoted to the Scarlet Witch of legend. And so, in short, Chthon knows he can use Wanda, so he made things very convenient for Wanda so that she will fuck up the multiverse and presumably let him out of the pocket dimension that he's been stashed in if we're keeping Chip from the comics. Because here comes the geek exposition part. In the comics, in ancient times of proto Earth, the world was ruled over by the children of Gaia, who is like the living sentience of the Earth, known as the Elder Gods. The eldest and strongest of the Elder Gods was a being named Chthon, who was so addicted to his own power, kind of like Lucifer, that he dabbled in dark magic and became the god of darkness and chaos. Now, his younger sister, Ajtur, one of the 3 Vishanti, noticed this, and so when Chthon wrote the Darkhold to encapsulate all of his dark magic and his discoveries regarding chaos magic, his sister Ajtur and her two associates, Agamotto and Hoggoth, formed the trifecta or the triad of the Vishanti, created a book called the Book of the Vishanti as a counterpoint to the Darkhold, and bound them together with a spell so that whenever new discoveries regarding dark magic were made, corresponding solutions to those problems would also present themselves within the Book of the Vishanti. That's the lore with regards to both the Darkhold and the Book of Vishanti, which is why I really, really would have liked to have seen the Vishanti all fucking ready, but we'll get into that when we get into that. Banana.
Yeah, sorry, one second. I'm trying, as Janitor said, the audio is echoing, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Ah, okay.
Audio. No, echo cancellation's on.
It's probably just StreamYard fucking up. I'm not sure there's anything we can do about it.
Yeah. Well, let's move on then.
Yeah, banana.
And it can destroy one or both universes that are involved in the incursion. Anywho, they are far more concerned with Doctor Strange than they are about the Scarlet Witch. And man, that might come and bite them in the butt a little later. So they're about to vote on Doctor Strange's fate. And guess what? Wanda shows up. John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic and some.
Okay, that's exactly the joke. Okay, that's exactly the joke. The joke is that they're too short-sighted to realize that the Scarlet Witch of Legend is a big frickin' deal, and they're confident in themselves, so they think they can handle her. And in actuality, no, they cannot.
It's the video that's echoing.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's a StreamYard thing, then. Unfortunately, we can't do much about it.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah, banana.
Although it could be coming through my mic, so I might have to mute it.
Maybe, but it's not. I don't think it's that noticeable, so it's fine. Banana.
Mounts Black Bolt, Haley Atwell's Captain Carter, and Lashana Lynch, female 007 herself, all decide to take her on, and then they are killed in order of privilege. You not. And this part is just so stupid. Okay, Mr. Fantastic, the first time you
Okay, here's the thing. In the comics, a lot of the time when you introduce a character via the multiverse, it is explicitly to kill them off. So there's nothing wrong with Wanda killing them all off here because they're not our universe's version of them, so it doesn't really matter much anyway. And with regards to and here's the thing. I know a lot of people had problems with Mr. Fantastic basically spoilering Wanda and explaining exactly how to defeat Black Bolt. Here's two things that I want you to consider. Thing one, Reed Richards is always and has always been in the comics the stupidest smart person in the history of any universe ever. Because while he has a genius level intellect, he has the common sense of a 2-year-old. I.e., his brain is so preoccupied with the scientific mysteries of the universe that he doesn't have time for social niceties or for common fucking sense. As demonstrated, for example, in the Trial of Galactus arc, where Reed Richards finds Galactus dying, tries to heal him, and then Galactus, of course, because he's freaking Galactus, goes off and eats. I think it might be the Skrull world, or it might be the Skrull world and also the Shi'ar world, and then the Shi'ar put Reed on trial for having saved Galactus from death. And of course, as I previously mentioned, Reed Richards is usually the person to discover the multiverse in the comics, and the first thing he does whenever he gets there is find alternate versions of himself, and then he forms what's known as the Council of Reeds. Now, mind you, Reed Richards is once again the stupidest smart person to ever exist in a comic book universe. Therefore, the Council of Reeds become a bunch of bureaucratic idiots, like you do. So, Reed Richards being the stupidest smart person in the history of the universe is a very much in character thing for him to be, because he has he maxed out his raw int stat, but it utterly crippled his charisma and his fucking wisdom, to make a D&D metaphor. I.e., he has zero perception skills whatsoever. He has zero social skills whatsoever. This is consistent with Reed.
Also, the biggest thing is this team, this Illuminati, was quite arrogant.
Yeah. And here's the second factor of my defense for this scene. Because the Wanda of this universe does not yet realize she is the Scarlet Witch. She hasn't trained like Wanda has. She hasn't found the Darkhold and become educated on what she can do. So if the Illuminati is familiar with Wanda Maximoff in their universe, they're familiar with her basically having the powers of pseudo telekinesis, like Wanda has had up until this point in the MCU, before WandaVision, or the mind control whammy thing she does. But our Wanda has not gained any additional power from the Darkhold, but has gained better understanding of how her powers work and what she can do with them. So they probably thought to themselves, well, our Wanda can only do glorified telekinesis and mind whammy stuff, so she's not really that much of a threat. But this Wanda is being possessed by our Wanda, who has become aware of what it means to be the Scarlet Witch, has tapped into her reality warping chaos magic powers, and therefore, because their powers are the same, but our Wanda's knowledge is more extensive in that she knows what she can do with them, she is not limited to the glorified telekinesis and mind whammy stuff that our Wanda had been previously limited to. But because of that, because the Wanda of this universe is still latently the Scarlet Witch, because their powers are the same, and our Wanda knows their shared powers better than 838 Wanda does, she can use the reality warping capabilities. So in Reed's mind, he's thinking to himself probably, well, all she can do is glorified telekinesis and glorified mind whammy stuff. So what do I have to worry about her doing to Black Bolt when I tell her Black Bolt can destroy you with one whisper from his mouth? Because he doesn't know that she can warp reality in any way. He doesn't know that she could rewrite reality so he doesn't have a mouth. If you're expecting a person to have glorified telekinesis and mind whammy powers, and all of a sudden they bust out reality warping magic on you, it's going to change the situation somewhat, don't you think? I.e., he didn't know that she could do that, but she does know that she can do that. He's expecting a Wanda who can do glorified telekinesis and mind whammy stuff, and not a Wanda who can warp reality, because he doesn't. This Wanda didn't ever become the Scarlet Witch, and therefore she doesn't know that she can do that, so he wouldn't know either. But
I also heard a theory that the Illuminati Earth is a dystopia.
Well, yeah, to some degree. I imagine if it's ruled over by a pseudo benevolent council, probably probably one of those dystopias that look utopian on the surface, but have a very dark underbelly, kind of like Ba Sing Se from episode of Last Airbender.
There were the Ultron bots, so
yeah.
Anyway,
Banana.
Produce Mr. Fantastic into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
You
You
kill him immediately. He barely shows his powers. He's supposed to be the smartest man in the MCU, and he was a complete dumbass. Wanda was able to remove Black Bolt's mouth and pop his brain. And our two heroes, one of them who could sling a shield made out of vibranium.
Okay. I'll be honest. The superpowered super soldier compared to a reality warping witch gonna die pretty damn easily.
No, but I think that's his point. I think he's wondering why she lasted longer, why Captain Carter lasted longer against Wanda than Mr. Fantastic or Black Bolt. And the answer is because Reed was initially expecting her to just have telekinesis and mind whammy stuff. And she, of course, knows more about what the Scarlet Witch is capable of, so she can pull the reality warping hexes. And when he tells her, Black Bolt can destroy you with one whisper from his mouth, he's not expecting her to just be able to remove his mouth, but she obviously knows she can do that. And Reed is still trying to be gentle with Wanda, because 838 universe Wanda hasn't done anything wrong. It's 616, for convenience's sake, universe Wanda that's doing bad shit. So obviously, when they manage to force her out of, when they manage to force Wanda out of, or rather, when they manage to force the Scarlet Witch out of Wanda's body, she's still going to have to live and presumably continue raising her kids, so they don't want to hurt her too badly if they can avoid it. And of course, that gives Wanda the opening to once again pull out a power that Reed isn't expecting and pull the Edna Mode demonstrating Elastigirl suit thing on him, and then make his head explode Scanner style. And again, I would actually agree with them that I don't think Captain Carter should have lasted as long as she did. But maybe Wanda was actually trying to be gentle and thought that if she just threw Captain Carter away, she would know she had been beaten and not continue. But of course, like any version of Captain America whatsoever, she can do this all day. So Wanda goes, all right, I tried to be nice, and now... And we'll get into Captain Carter because he actually, or Captain Marvel, because he actually makes an issue of it, and I can explain to him why that is. So, banana.
Shield made out of vibranium, and the other one can shoot lasers out of her hands, stood there and did all. But that was so they could have a big, long girl fight. Admittedly, the beautiful Haley Atwell gets cut in half, and I'm no fan of Captain Marvel, but how do you kill her by throwing a statue on her? A statue of Brie Larson, Captain Marvel? The one who flew through a ship in Endgame?
Okay. This actually I can explain, and this is once again another case of you didn't pay close enough attention to the movie. If you watch the scene where Wanda is fighting Captain Marvel, you slowly see Captain Marvel's gold energy overtaken by Wanda's red energy. And much like Agatha did to her coven in WandaVision, or much like Wanda is trying to do to America throughout the course of this movie, it's because Wanda is slowly siphoning away Captain Marvel's energy. Because she can do that. Because the entire premise of this movie relies on her A, being able to do that, and B, it was also set up in WandaVision with what Agatha could do. So yeah, the reason why the statue thing works on Captain Marvel is because by the time she gets flicked up against the wall and falls on the floor, she's human again. Her cosmic power is no longer hers because Wanda has absorbed some of it or translated it into her own power. Which, and I know, I'm imagining somebody's gonna EFAP this when I send this to Gary, and I'm imagining Rags of all people being like, well, how could she do that? Wanda's powers are magic based and Captain Marvel's is cosmic based. Well, if you know the lore of the MCU well enough, you know that in the MCU, Captain Marvel gets her powers from being exposed to the Tesseract that's been funneled through an alien engine. Now, as we know, the Infinity Stones of the Marvel Universe are linked. We see it first in the first Avengers movie when Loki uses the Mind Stone to hack into the Tesseract and open a portal so his army can come to Earth. And then we see it alluded to again in Infinity War when apparently the Mind Stone and the Soul Stone were in communication, or rather the Space Stone and the Soul Stone were in communication, such that Red Skull, at the end of Captain America the First Avenger, got zapped to Vormir to be the protector of the Soul Stone. And we see that Vision can sense that Thanos is coming through the Mind Stone because the Mind Stone can sense the other Infinity Stones. So the energy signatures of the various Infinity Stones are related. So, and for the purposes of the MCU, Wanda's magic was amplified by exposure to the Mind Stone, and some of the Mind Stone's residual energy still remained in her. So if anyone's going to have a chance of siphoning off Captain Marvel's energy that was derived from the Tesseract, it's going to be Wanda because Wanda was amplified by the Mind Stone, Captain Marvel was amplified by the Space Stone, and their energy signatures are comparable. So Wanda does the thing that we saw Agatha do in WandaVision, and the thing that she's been trying to do all movie long to America, but she does it to Captain Marvel, so that by the time Captain Marvel is dropped on the floor, she's human again, and therefore the statue crushes her like it would crush any human, because without her Tesseract power, without the cosmic energy she got from the Tesseract, she's human again, to make a reference to Beauty and the Beast. So that's why. It's because Wanda absorbed Captain Marvel's energy, and you can see it if you watch the clip, and by the time Wanda throws the statue on her, she's human again. Banana.
Sorry, disappeared for a quick sec. Hold on. Dragon Turtle, by that logic, clearly a fireball can affect a tank, nor can the tank effectively a magic shield because science and magic can't affect one another.
Yeah, I know, but that's the bullshit logic I've seen some people argue when I pointed out to them that if you watch the clip, you can clearly see Wanda's red energy overtaking Captain Marvel's gold energy, and you can even see her gold aura slowly flickering out as she's being tossed across the room several times. And the last time, you can clearly see her trying to use her powers as the statue is coming down, and it doesn't work. So yeah, it's very obvious if you actually paid attention to either WandaVision, this movie, or even the sort of intervening logic of the Infinity Stones, that what is happening there is Wanda is slowly wicking off Captain Marvel's energy or converting it, and therefore Captain Marvel is human again when the statue comes down on her, and a statue that big is going to destroy a normal human. Anyway, we're stopping there, I guess. So there will be a third part when we get to the end of it, I guess. Or actually, how much of the video is there left from where we were? Because we could just push it to 10 o'clock and finish it.
It was like about okay, so it was like 14:20. It's 20 minutes and it's about close to 21 minutes. So
do you want to just finish it, or do you want to save it for a third part?
All right, we'll try. Okay, give me a second to set it back up.
Yeah.
We'll at least
'Cause
try.
Because I'd rather just send a 2-part response to Gary so that we can get it done. Because even splitting it up into 2 is probably already going to be annoying, and I don't want to make him sit through like 3 hours of stuff, or 3 separate streams.
Okay. Also, back up. Sharing. There. Yeah.
All right, banana.
Ship in Endgame? Okay, that's funny. Where's Doctor Strange and all this? Well, he has a fight with Baron Mordo, and he just leaves him in some crevice, never to be seen again. Then there's Professor X, who can battle in the psychic plane as a level 5 mutant, could have scrambled Wanda's brains whenever he wanted. I guess except in this universe where it's simpleton.
Okay. The difference here is one of them is a psychic telepath and one of them is a witch. Yes, while Professor Xavier is a very strong telepath, he's probably not entirely prepared for a mental battle with a witch, because magical energy and psychic energy, while related, even in the comics, are not the same thing. And if you notice, Wanda came in with a fuck ton of magical energy surrounding her, exemplified by the red mist. So even if Wanda had just walked in, maybe he would have had a chance, but she was already overwhelming him by the virtue of, magical energy, which Xavier can't deal with. He can only deal with psychic energy. And he also was primarily focused on 838 Universe's Wanda's mind, and was blindsided by the infusion of the Scarlet Witch. So that's why. It's because while Professor Xavier is the grand poobah among telepaths, he's less prepared for a witch that can do mental stuff. He also was busy trying to rescue 838 Wanda's mind from Scarlet Witch and wasn't paying attention to his own personal boundaries. Anyway, banana.
Well, there's also the thing, the line he said of like Stephen, like hitting the Doctor Strange of their universe, always insisted on going in alone, and he went
And then,
alone.
of course, yeah, and then Xavier did the exact same shit because the point is that they are supposed to be criticizing him for being arrogant while simultaneously being arrogant. Hence why Maria Rambeau, Captain Marvel, responds to his concerns about the Scarlet Witch of Legend is coming to kill you all. You better fucking run. Our response is, we can handle your little witch if she decides to dreamwalk. And again, my guess is she just assumed that universe's Wanda could do the exact same thing as their universe's Wanda, which is glorified telekinesis and mind stuff. Whereas our Wanda has become aware that she's the Scarlet Witch and developed her skills accordingly. Banana.
All right. Yep. 1 sec. Yep. There. Banana.
And Professor X, who just allowed Wanda to break his neck. But the Easter eggs and the cameos and the keys jangling. You know what a Disney Marvel fan's favorite thing is?
the next Disney Marvel thing. So America Chavez saves herself. She's with Christine Palmer. They run into Doctor Strange. Professor X told him that the Vishanti Good Book of MacGuffin is at the base. They find.
Once again, lampshading the Book of the Vishanti shows you have no understanding of mystical Marvel lore, and it pisses me off because your first argument against why Jack Schaefer is stupid, and I agree with you, by the way, is that she wasn't familiar enough with comic lore, which is a fair argument. But if you're going to use that argument of, she's too normie to understand comics, that's why she was a bad writer, then you can't fall for the same flaw, which is you didn't know enough about the mystical Marvel lore, or you didn't care enough to know that the Book of Vishanti and the Darkhold are important and have been established for years and aren't just a cynical ploy to manipulate Sam Raimi's oeuvre or what have you. But other points that you didn't pay attention to is the Strange of the 838 universe built a waypoint to the Book of Vishanti. The Book of Vishanti is not in their universe. The doorway that they go through is a portal between dimensions to the nexus point between all realities, which I forget the name of, but does exist in the comics. So it's not in the base. It's the portal that will take them to the book is in the base. Banana.
Sorry. I don't know. My fucking nothing was working for a second there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. Banana.
Find it, and Wanda catches up and immediately destroys it. Dreamwalking Wanda is able to get America Chavez and expel Doctor Strange and Laura, Christine Palmer. Now, a bit earlier, Wong tried to plead with Wanda that isn't it enough to know that your kids are out there and they're being taken care of, and she threw Wong off Wonder Door because he was mansplaining. Doctor Strange and Chris.
What?
No, she threw him off because she's fucking insane and she will not be reasoned with, at least in the abstract. Which, to say nothing else, is entirely consistent with mothers that have lost their children and everything. So it's
I've seen that up close and personal. So
yeah, there's that. Also, I didn't get the impression that the Book of Vishanti was destroyed. I thought the cover was just burnt off. It didn't seem like the entire book was burning. It just seemed like the first page, which I assume was the cover, was burnt off. So presumably it could still be used later on if they needed to use it. Or at least I hope so, because to establish the Book of Vishanti but never actually fucking use it does piss me off. Especially because we haven't met the Vishanti yet, and it annoys me. In the MCU at least. Banana.
Yeah. No.
And she threw Wong off Wonder Door because he was mansplaining. Doctor Strange and Christine Palmer end up in a universe that has been wiped out by an incursion. And of course, it was the Doctor Strange of this universe's fault. Christine Palmer reminds this Doctor Strange that Doctor Strange didn't do a very good job of stopping the incursion. It's almost like Victoria Alonso.
Well, yeah, to emphasize, given that there are entire universes at stake here, reminding him of the importance of the point probably is not too unreasonable. Although, to be fair, this universe wasn't entirely destroyed by an incursion. It was just fucked up a little bit. Because, in a universe that was truly fucked up by a incursion in its entirety, probably wouldn't still have atmosphere and probably would have buildings left standing because all matter would probably have come undone at some point. But Banana.
Yeah.
Wrote the script for this.
We're here. We waited and waited and waited.
Yes.
Cheeky.
and Cheeky, and as Cheeky Chavez, you can have America Chavez! In 3D.
In 3D IMAX.
4D.
4D.
Whatever D you want.
I don't
Okay,
know.
yes. That woman is stupid, but it is relevant to Sweet Fuck All. So, banana.
Okay, I don't know who the fuck that is, and I don't really care to.
Because I want to be done talking about this movie. Let's just get to the end. And I predicted the minute I learned that Scarlet Witch was going to be in this film, and I wasn't the only one. I thought Doctor Strange would probably end up fighting himself, and Wanda would end up defeating herself. Now that Wanda has America Chavez, does she just immediately rip out her powers? No, she dicks around and waits for Doctor.
Presumably, it takes a bit.
Yeah, like,
She's doing it through a ritual, so I assume there are steps in the ritual that need to be like accomplished and such. And no, I'm not gonna retract what I said about Wanda stealing Captain Marvel's powers, therefore, because what she did is very similar to what Agatha did in What If, and what we see Wanda doing later when she's not using the ritual. So it does only take a few seconds, especially if Captain Marvel wasn't paying attention. Because if you remember the scene in WandaVision, it only took Agatha a few seconds once she realized what she was doing to rip out her entire coven's magic.
you said What If earlier instead of WandaVision.
Oh, did I? Sorry. But yeah, in Agatha's scene in WandaVision, which is the flashback where we see her rip out her coven's magic, only took a few seconds. And what we see later when Wanda is freed from the constraints of the ritual only takes a few seconds. So it's just a matter of she's trying to do the ritual the right way, and it's taking a little bit longer than you would think. Banana.
Doctor Strange to save her. I'm sorry, she waits around so a zombie version of Doctor Strange can give America Chavez a pep talk so it completes her hero's journey. She was great all along. Yeah, Doctor Strange kills the other Doctor Strange, gets the Darkhold, and Dream walks into his zombie self that died earlier on in the film. Yes, this was a very...
What problem could you possibly have with this? The character is uncertain of her powers. Strange allows her to become more certain of her powers, and we see her powers skyrocket when she is more confident, as we saw earlier when she broke the unbreakable glass in the Illuminati chamber, which is the purpose of that scene, by the way, and I didn't catch that earlier when you alluded to it. But the point of that scene is to show that when she's more confident or more desperate, her powers tend to be more stable and skyrocket. Also, it's Doctor Strange's influence over her as a mentor that allows her to do that. Hence why this is still Doctor Strange's movie. Because him mentoring America is what makes America able to control her powers. And incidentally, I'm honestly kind of glad he doesn't allude to the music scene, because the music scene is my favorite scene. And if he had crapped all over the music scene, I would have been unnecessarily pissed with him. So fair enough. Banana.
What I was gonna say is, like, for most of the movie, it seems, well, yeah, she doesn't have control of her power, but also she seems afraid of it.
Yeah, she's very traumatized by the fact that she's had to bounce through multiverse upon multiverse, and nobody has been there for her this entire time. Not to mention the fact that the last person who she trusted was a version of Doctor Strange, and he almost tried to rip her powers out. So, gulp. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it's wrong for her to be upset, and she actually addresses that at one point in this scene where she admits, okay, I understand what you were trying to do now. It's okay to take my powers now. I don't mind dying for this. But Strange, his arc is stop with the multiversal calculus bullshit and actually care about people, and also stop being such an arrogant prick thinking your way is the only way. So he grows more humble and more self-aware, and thereby learns to treat people like people and learns to trust America Chavez. Now, granted, he should have had this same arc in No Way Home and learned to trust Peter's judgment, which he kind of did because it was Peter's suggestion that they try a different spell at the end of No Way Home. So, and to be fair, large swaths of the events of No Way Home got ripped from his memory because they had to do with Peter Parker, and therefore he can't remember them now, or at least they're blurred over. So it makes sense that he hasn't fully learned the consequences of his actions from that shenanigans.
Right.
Unless you had a thing.
I thought I did, but no, nothing really comes to mind. So yeah, it's Banana.
Very cool, short-lived Raimi scene. America fights Wanda a little bit, and then she gives her what she wants. He opens a portal to the other Wanda and her kids, and then she gets to see what everyone's been telling her the entire movie. She never had kids. The kids in the other universe belong to someone else, and as Wanda says to herself,
No, like, I don't.
That's part of... Go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I personally, I don't think that's what was happening.
Yeah, at no point did she admit she never had kids, because to her, it doesn't matter that they were fictional, because just like if anyone else had this happen to them, whereby everything they ever loved was some sort of schizophrenic construct.
To quote a Star Wars meme, and points to anyone who gets this in the comments here. Your feelings for them, they are not real. They are real to me. You know, obviously everyone in the movie saying, feelings for them are not real. They are real to me, Wanda.
Yeah. And here's the... Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and again, like, yeah, she's so obsessed with getting her kids that she's not really considering, will she be their mother?
Yeah, she has tunnel vision, probably assisted by 18 months of chattering from the Darkhold. And moreover, and this is calling back to what I said earlier, part of her arc is to learn the difference between being willing to do something in theory, but not actually being able to go through with it when faced with the real world consequences of it. It's one thing to say, let the world burn for me to get what I want. It's another thing to actually be sitting there with matches ready to set the world on fire. And in Wanda's case, it's one thing to say, in theory, to Strange when he brings this up, oh yeah, it sucks to be the other Wanda, I guess I'll just kill her and take her kids. And it's another to actually be faced with another Wanda who's protective of her kids, and her kids not wanting anything to do with her. Imagine being a mother and losing your kids, regardless of whether they were a schizophrenic construct or whatever, and then being given the opportunity to go to another universe to see your kids, and to realize that in order to do that, you have to become a person that your kids will hate. That's a really actually emotionally moving moment, because, again, her arc is to learn the difference between being willing to do something in theory and to actually be faced with the real world consequences of it. Banana. Good song reference, Dragon Turtle. I got that joke.
Right, sorry. I don't know. My internet's been acting really weird lately.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fine now.
Okay.
So yeah,
Banana.
All right.
they are love.
They are
Then
love.
Wanda throws a mountain on herself and destroys the Darkhold in every universe. Well, that about wraps it up for Doctor Strange 2. America Chavez is fine and goes off to train at Comitage with the Sorcerer Supreme Wong because Doctor Strange is still not the Sorcerer Supreme. 838 Christine Palmer goes back home.
Okay, I have two things.
Go ahead.
One,
Go ahead.
I think it's said that Wanda destroys every Darkhold in the multiverse. Or am I not remembering right?
Yes. Yes. It said, and then Strange sees the alt universe Darkhold that he got from Sinister Strange burn up with Wanda's red chaos magic.
Okay. God, it's been a bit since I saw the movie, so okay. I
really want to see it again because everyone is bitching that movie won't make $1 billion, and I want to help it make $1 billion so that they make a third one.
I retract that statement then. The second thing is, he's not the Sorcerer Supreme yet. Okay, it took him a while, as Dawn said before, like in world and real world, 10 years, correct?
Yeah, according to the timeline of Doctor Strange in the comics, Doctor Strange was first introduced in 1963 in Strange Tales, either 111 or 115. I can't remember. I think 115 might have been his origin story. But regardless, Doctor Strange was introduced in 1963 and didn't Supreme. He went for the Ancient One this entire time, and he became Sorcerer Supreme at the conclusion of an arc in Marvel Premiere in, I believe it was actually 1973, so it was literally 10 years, wherein the god, the sovereign ruler of which is a race of Lovecraftian creatures in the Marvel Universe, known as Shima-Gorath, was coming to the mundane universe and was using the Ancient One's mind as a bridge to enter the universe. So the Ancient One had to convince Doctor Strange to kill him, which he did, and then eventually, in the course of this, the Ancient One basically says to Doctor Strange, "You have proven yourself worthy of the title of Sorcerer Supreme. Have my title," and then he dies. So yeah, it wasn't until the death of the Ancient One in the comics, 10 years into his publication history, both in real time and in publication history, because this was at a time before the sliding time scale of the Marvel Universe was established, so things happened mostly in real time. It took 10 years of publication history and 10 years in universe for Doctor Strange to become Sorcerer Supreme. And this version of Doctor Strange is still struggling with keeping his arrogance in check, so he needs to once again become more humble and less self-serving so that he can become someone worthy of the title of Sorcerer Supreme. And that's the other thing. Last time we touched on something that I didn't catch that Gary mentioned, but he sarcastically quips about how the Ancient One said that Doctor Strange was supposed to be the best of them, but he didn't take into account the fact that the Ancient One can see the fucking future. So that doesn't mean he has to be Sorcerer Supreme right frickin' now. It means that his eventual arc, the conclusion to his story, will be him becoming Sorcerer Supreme. And this is only his second movie, and as we saw in No Way Home, and in this movie, he's not fully ready to take on the responsibilities of being Sorcerer Supreme. He needs to become more humble. So this movie shows him becoming more humble by being willing to bow to Wong, who is the rightfully elected Sorcerer Supreme at this particular moment.
Right. Hey, Don, you might want to check private chat. But
yeah. Sorry, guys. The pollen has been kicking my ass, or either that, or I'm catching my brother's cold. So I apologize for that. I don't have a fucking tissue handy, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. Banana.
Well, I was gonna say, like, in the MCU, Wong does prove worthy to be a Sorcerer Supreme, because he's probably been there fairly long.
And he has a more stable moral compass at this particular moment than Doctor Strange does.
Yeah.
Um,
He's also he was also a guardian of a sanctum, I believe, like Hong Kong.
No, he was the librarian of Kamar-Taj in the first movie. So he was already a fairly high-ranking master of the mystic arts to begin with. And of course, whenever either the Vishanti showed up and declared the trial of the sorcerers, or whatever other mechanism they want to say elect Sorcerer Supreme happened, Strange was not there, and half of the other masters of the mystic arts weren't there. So Wong was the most capable master of the mystic arts at the time, so he's Sorcerer Supreme. And until either whatever mechanism elects Sorcerer Supreme happens again, probably in the third movie, or
Wong died.
or Wong dies or passes on his title, Wong is still Sorcerer Supreme, and Strange needs to humble himself and become aware of that, because this isn't the end of his arc. His arc is still in progress. Just like saying that Tony hasn't learned his lesson at the time of Age of Ultron is kind of stupid, because his arc is still in progress. That's why he fucks everything up horribly in Age of Ultron, because he still hasn't learned not to be in control of everything. And by the time of Endgame, he has finally learned to let other people have the glory by sacrificing himself. Likewise, Strange is going to slowly but surely become a better candidate for Sorcerer Supreme as the movies carry on, and eventually he is going to be given the title. Although, ironically, probably by the time he gets the title, he probably won't want it. But as the old saying goes, those who want power are probably the least inclined to use it well, and those who would never seek power are probably the ones who would be likely to use it effectively.
All right. No.
Banana.
Doctor Strange gets a third eye and meets Clea from Marvel on Ice. Yes, it's Charlize Theron as Clea, and her costume is the worst one I've ever seen. It looked like a 90s superhero TV show. This film was a hot mess narratively, structurally. There was no real plot. I have so many questions. I will not get to all of them. And
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I disagree in terms of narrative.
The narrative makes.
Arguably in structure.
Yeah. Again, nobody here is disagreeing that Michael Waldron was, or is it Michael Waldron? I think it's Michael Waldron. But
Yeah.
Michael Waldron is too much of an inexperienced writer to be tasked with doing a movie like this. So there are major scriptural problems throughout this movie. But it's not some kind of disaster. It's not some kind of hot mess. And with regards to Clea, she's from another dimension, you dick. Why do you think she would be wearing normal clothes?
No, I think it's the costume design is the problem.
Again, she's supposed to be a sorceress from another dimension. Why would she have normal clothes?
No, not the normal clothes thing. I think the costume just doesn't look good.
And it's possible they might either redesign it, or it might look better in the next movie when she's actually presumably going to be a main character. And incidentally, how dare you, sir, lampshade Clea? She has been Doctor Strange's on-again, off-again significant other and apprentice for decades in the comics. Not to mention she's the niece of Dormammu and therefore is half Faltine, and therefore has inherently more mystic power than he does, because Doctor Strange, and I'm going to point this out for anyone who doesn't fucking get the point, Doctor Strange, unlike Wanda, unlike apparently Ned fucking Leeds for some goddamn reason, has no inherent magical power. What he has is the ability to develop a skill. He has no excess magical energy like Wanda does. She is inherently gifted with inherent magical energy. And Clea is inherently gifted with inherent magical energy by being the niece of Dormammu. But Strange has no power. What he has instead of power is skills and techniques. Anyone in the context of the Marvel Universe can use magic if they work their ass off at it. It's a very difficult skill, much like being a medical doctor is something that anyone can do in theory, but is a fucking hard skill. Hence the connection, you see. Yeah, but that's the difference between Doctor Strange and a lot of other magic users in the Marvel Universe, both in the comics canon and I hope to God in the MCU, is he has no inherent power. What he has is a natural aptitude for learning shit, which he then channels into studying magic, and therefore becomes good at it.
Well, it is 10, and we're at 1740.
Should we let him just finish up?
Yeah.
Okay, banana.
In all of these multiverses, in all of these realities, where was Quicksilver? Where was Vision? Where was Kang, the descendant of Reed Richards? Why weren't any of the multiversal events connected to Loki or Spider-Man No Way Home or WandaVision? Where were the Nexus events? Why didn't Defender Doctor Strange use his sling ring? Or Wong? Or
Okay. In order, the main reason why multiverse shenanigans wasn't the focus is because this is the goddamn Doctor Strange movie. And moreover, the most important part of the phrase multiverse of madness is not the multiverse part, it's the of madness part. This movie was not a multiverse movie with some Lovecraftian supernatural elements. It was a Lovecraftian supernatural horror comedy with some multiversal elements for the sake of continuity. So the main reason why none of the multiverses were more of the focus is because, quite frankly, Kevin Feige probably insisted on the Illuminati scene, and Sam Raimi was like, as long as you let me do everything else I want to do, I'm fine with that. And that's fair. Yeah, so the reason why this movie didn't focus more heavily on the multiverse is because it's not, contrary to what Odin's movie blog said, or what a lot of other people have said, this movie is not a multiverse movie. It's a Lovecraftian horror comedy with some multiversal elements. So that's why the multiverse didn't play a bigger part. Also, I'll give you the Vision thing, because the fact that none of these universes where Wanda has kids involve the Vision bothers me. But as far as the sling ring thing goes, it's because the portals are, quite frankly, just lame. Like they were either introduced too early or they were made too easy, and so pulling them out every 5 minutes would just be boring after a while. Also, given that Defender Strange was trying to get to the Book of Vishanti, it's very possible that because it's the Book of the freaking Vishanti, and because it's the nexus of all realities they're wanting to visit, that it might not be somewhere they can travel to, which is established by the fact that Wong can't sling ring his way directly to Mount Wundagore because sorcery has certain limits, and walking on the grounds of Wundagore is something you have to do the good old-fashioned way and not use portals. So I imagine the same is true with the Book of Vishanti, because, you know, existential symmetry and all that, i.e., if one nexus of pure evil can't be reached by sling rings, it's highly probable that the corresponding Book of Good probably can't be reached by sling rings either. Banana.
Let me get that tab there. I was keeping an eye on chat.
Yeah.
There. Banana.
Doctor Strange, or any one of the sorcerers at Comitage? Where was Marvel's Katie? Where were the Celestials, the Eternals, the Gods, the other Avengers? I would say the entire multiverse being at stake is kind of a big stake. Why wasn't Christine Palmer the least bit bothered by the death of all her coworkers? Why did two heroes just stand there with their thumbs up their ass while Black Bolt got his brain popped and Mr. Fantastic was
Because if the Celestials and the Gods and everything else had shown up, then probably would have been an overstuffed movie. And let's also be honest, the less we address Eternals until they fix it and make it more like Ragnarok or Guardians of the Galaxy, the better. Also, you're assuming they would know what was going on with the multiverse, and you're assuming that they would be able to do anything, and you're assuming that Doctor Strange and Wong would want to bring in more people than they feel is necessary, because if you bring in a bunch of Avengers who don't have the skills necessary to stop Wanda, all you're doing is using other superheroes as fucking collateral damage, because that's probably what would have happened if they had went and got Ant-Man or Spider-Man or anyone else. And not to mention, I imagine Spider-Man wouldn't be so keen to help, considering that magic basically ruined his entire life. And I imagine he's still kind of mad at Strange for that, even though it was his fucking fault, but never mind. But yeah, if they go and get all the street level Avengers, Wanda rips through them like Jean Grey ripped through most of the mutants at the end of X-Men: The Last Stand, and now shit, we're missing a bunch of heroes. As for the gods, it's because Thor: Love and Thunder is the movie where we're going to set up a bunch of gods, and you're already bitching that this movie takes too much influence from WandaVision, so taking time out of its runtime to tie in Moon Knight stuff probably wouldn't have gone over any better with most people. Would have gone over fine with me, because I like magical Marvel stuff to feature magical Marvel characters, but, I'm apparently in the minority on this. Banana.
Yep.
Unless you had a thing.
No, not really. Banana.
Just stand there with their thumbs up their ass while Black Bolt got his brain popped and Mr. Fantastic was turned into spaghetti. Why have we gotten America Chavez, the Scarlet Scarab, 2 female versions of Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, female Thor, and Echo before we get the Fantastic Four, Namor, the Silver Surfer, Galactus, and
I can answer that one, actually. Because Marvel are dumbasses.
Yeah, because muscle for justice morality. This point I will agree with you on.
Yeah, a bit of that, but I would also just argue is that they really have no idea how to handle those specific properties.
Yeah.
And therefore they're scared of actually tackling them. And are
Although to be fair, they just got the rights to the Fantastic Four again, so
that is okay. That is actually completely fair, because
they couldn't have introduced him or them any earlier than they're already planning to. So
yeah, so it's
Banana.
No, it's no, don't have anything else to say. Yeah, so
Okay. Banana.
No.
Dr. Doom and the X-Men. We did get the answer to one question. We know why Scott Derrickson left. And the continued character assassination in Marvel films. And it wasn't just Doctor Strange, but we'll start there. Not the Sorcerer Supreme, told constantly he blew it with Christine Palmer, and he does in every multi.
Okay, one, because Christine Palmer only plays a large role in Doctor Strange's character arc in one standalone trade, which is Doctor Strange: The Oath, and making her his love interest was stupid to begin with. 2, because it takes him time to become worthy of Sorcerer Supreme, you dickhead, both in the comics and apparently in the MCU. 3, because his arc is not yet finished, because this is only his second movie, and these characters all get trilogies. This has been established well by now. Every character that they think is worthy of one movie is at least going to wind up with a trilogy, more if they're successful, or if they fuck it up like they did with the first 2 Thor movies and feel like they need a mulligan. That's why Thor's getting a 4th movie, mostly, because they realized, oh shit, we used Thor in the completely wrong way the first 2 times, and we finally figured out the correct formula in the 3rd movie, so mulligan. But yeah, it's because his character arc is still in progress. It's because it takes him time to become worthy of Sorcerer Supreme. And it's because his attachment to Christine Palmer or any love interest is not the point of Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has always been about spiritual elevation through the means of becoming humble and self-sacrificing. So he can't focus on his own personal happiness more than he focuses on the fate of the entire goddamn universe. This is one aspect of Doctor Strange's character arc that is carried through both in the comics and here. It's probably the only part of his character arc that is played through in both places, but it is consistent with his character. He can't afford to be worried about love interests because he has responsibilities that need to be dealt with. And he can't have those responsibilities, i.e., he can't become Sorcerer Supreme until he becomes a worthy enough person to become Sorcerer Supreme. And his character arc is still in progress.
Dang, Joe. Just this one popped up, and thus.
Mhm.
Alright, to be fair, in the comics, the Ancient One also stayed around for a long time, and in the MCU, she died in the first movie. In the comics, he gave his title to Strange, Holiness Death. I feel like there's a different word he meant to say there. But
Yeah, I'm betting there was a typo, like maybe only on his death was what he was going for.
yeah.
Which is fair, but given that the Ancient One was dead before she could continue his training, this Doctor Strange has even further to go than comic Doctor Strange because he only had 1 year with the Ancient One, whereas Doctor Strange in the comics had like several years before he even became, the main character of a comic, and then 10 more years in between becoming Sorcerer Supreme and not just being the Ancient One's mystical gopher, basically, like dealing with all the smaller threats that the Ancient One didn't feel was worthy enough of his time, and continuing his training that way. So yeah,
it was a typo. Yeah,
I figured.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Banana.
Banana.
Verse, Christine Palmer at one point tells him how to use his powers. Evil Doctor Strange at the end was killing all of the other Doctor Stranges in the multiverse because of Christine Palmer. Let's not forget, currently in Marvel Comics, Doctor Strange is dead. And essentially the personal journey in his own film was to give a zombie.
Okay, to my understanding, that Sinister Strange, as he's been called, basically a guy who just gave the fuck up on really his duties, and
he tried to use the Darkhold to find a universe where he and Christine were together, realized after a while that in no universe were they together, decided, you know what, fuck it, all versions of me want to be with this person. None of them have successfully managed to be with this person. Therefore, I'm going to do them all a favor, and I'm going to dreamwalk into them and commit suicide so that they all die. And like he tells our Doctor Strange when they're talking, have you ever had a dream where you're falling from a really high place? That was probably me.
And also she tells Strange how to do magic. That's more just going on. It is kind of stupid. Don't get me wrong on that. I won't disagree with that. But there is some context there that she knew, her universe is strange, and more than likely, probably knew how to. Probably was taught some stuff by him. Was a student,
or by Mordo after his death, or just learn shit for herself. Also, what she tells him is not even something he didn't already know. It's just something he didn't think of. So all she was doing was basically reminding him, by the way, these are spirits. You're a master of the mystic arts. Masters of the Mystic Arts can manipulate spirits and magic, therefore make with the binding and get yourself an army of the souls of the damned. And it wasn't even that he wouldn't have thought of that, it's that he was a little bit busy at the moment being mauled to think through what he was doing at the time. So she politely gave him a reminder, by the way, you guys, Masters of the Mystic Arts generally know how to bind spirits, so get to binding them. Yeah. It's really not that disgraceful. As for him being dead, let's face it, Doctor Strange as a character has been dead for all intents and purposes, i.e., he hasn't behaved like himself since like 2007 or whenever the fuck Planet Hulk or World War Hulk was. Like, that was the last story that Doctor Strange even behaved like Doctor Strange, and he doesn't even behave like Doctor Strange in the MCU as yet, really. So, at Infinity War notwithstanding.
Sorry, Dragon Troll. Even the smartest and sometimes even wisest people can benefit by bouncing things off other people.
There's that, and there's also, like I said, he was a little bit busy being mauled to think through his problems at this particular moment. So his friend, who has known him in her universe for many years, and who knows at least enough about magical artifacts to use one of them as the basis for a piece of technology and use another one to banish the same spirits, she quietly reminds him of something rather obvious, which is, you are a master of the mystic arts, you're a wizard, therefore, those are spirits that can be conjured and controlled through magic. Do some controlling, Stephen. To which I'm sure Stephen's reaction was, oh fuck, I can't believe I didn't think of that. And then he does it. And it obviously wasn't very difficult because he does it in the space of like 5 seconds. He just didn't think to do it at the time because he was busy being mauled. And then he does it, and then all's better. All's fair in love and war, as the saying goes.
Anyway.
Banana.
Be pep talk to the girl who's the key to everything and be told by Christine Palmer that he's scared to love. He doesn't finish off the bad guy in his own film. Hell, he wasn't there. And as far as Wanda is concerned, what a mess. Just like with Thor, who is going to find himself for about the 8th movie in a row, we have Wanda constantly.
Okay. He wasn't told that he's afraid to love.
No.
He said, the question of that this constantly asks is, are you happy, Stephen, throughout the movie, right?
And further to that, what would you do to be with the person you love? What would you do to be happy? Which mirrors Wanda's arc, because her answer to that question is, I will murder all the fucking universe. Whereas Strange's answer to that question is, maybe it's not about my happiness, maybe I need to get over myself. Which is consistent with his arc, both in the first movie, where he had to be told, it's not about you, and also consistent with his arc in the comics of, he finds himself, and he finds his spirituality, and he finds his power through getting the fuck over himself and becoming humble. And yes, it might be annoying that he has to go through a similar arc in his sequel movie as he did in his first movie, but real people sometimes have to be told the same thing or similar things a few times before they actually manage to complete their arc, i.e., being told it's not about you once is all well and good and does lead to him becoming a better person to some degree, but old habits are hard to break, and so when he finds himself as a humble person, he thinks, okay, now I'm a humble person, so I can do no wrong again, right? And then this movie comes along and goes, actually, no, you need to... It's not enough to simply understand that it's not about you. You have to keep a watchful eye over yourself, because as anyone who's ever gone through personal growth can tell you, sometimes you find yourself relapsing into the same thought patterns. That's why it's not as simple as giving up alcohol or giving up cigarettes. That's why the Alcoholics Anonymous program exists, because it's not just a switch you can flip from sober to not to drunk and back again. You have to actually keep watch over yourself. And likewise, if you're trying to reform a character trait that you don't like about yourself, in his case, arrogance, you have to be careful not to relapse into similar thought patterns. Because just because you internalize a lesson once doesn't mean you're always willing to apply it in as many areas as it needs to be applied. So you do sometimes have to refresh your memory of these things, especially when it's something deeply ingrained into your personality. Yeah, banana.
I don't know.
In grief, and well, thankfully she put herself out of her misery and put us out of her misery. And I like Scarlet Witch. And sure, they pulled from individual elements from the comics, but without all of those other characters who are in those comics, it's meaningless. Just like Wanda's logic, morality.
You do know that they take different elements from the comics and restructure them all the fucking time in the that's the entire premise of the MCU. Now granted, sometimes they're really, really shit at that. For example, it would have made a lot more sense in Endgame if Thanos had fallen for Hela like comic Thanos fell for Mistress Death, therefore giving him the standard emotional reason of, I want this person to like me, this person is the embodiment of death, therefore I'm going to kill a bunch of people to impress her, like he always had in the comics. In addition, and they could have done that in addition to his balancing the universe thing. So obviously there are ways they could have done it better, but quite frankly, I didn't need alternate universe Quicksilver for this to make sense. I didn't need a bunch of different versions of Vision for this to make sense. I'm fine with as it was presented because, like we were saying at the end of WandaVision, she was a villain at the end of that. She's been hovering between villain, anti-hero, and hero for the entirety of her arc in the MCU. And there's a great video by BHL Hudson that summarizes Wanda's arc up until this point. And when you are familiar with that, you realize she's been hovering between hero and villain this entire time. So the fact that a series of personal tragedies, i.e., to paraphrase the Joker, a one bad day scenario where she lost everything, mixed with the One Ring style MacGuffin of the Darkhold whispering in her ear for 18 months, was enough to tip her over the edge, because to quote another Joker, madness, as you know, is like gravity. All it takes is a little push. Ah! Yeah, but anyway, banana.
Well, Grant Journal said some interesting stuff here, and I feel like it should be given some light.
Yeah, okay.
So, real people also don't immediately find the happy medium. Some don't go far enough, some overcorrect, and some just aren't consistent in it and oscillate.
This is also true, which is part of the character arc. It's being able to find that happy medium, and this is something that Strange in the comics struggles with too. Although in the comics, his personal failings take more the form of, like you were saying, trying to overcompensate. Like he becomes so pathologically humble and self-sacrificing that it almost seems like he's suicidal or has a death wish. In the comics, at least when he's being written right, like he tries to mold himself after the Ancient Ones so much that he basically becomes a quasi-Buddhist and doesn't let himself have any attachments. And then in a particularly great Doctor Strange story, which was Strange Tales Volume 2, which was originally a book that he shared with Cloak and Dagger, several of Doctor Strange's friends, Topaz, Rintra, I think one of the Valkyries was involved at some point in this arc, tell him to loosen his standards a little bit, because in trying to be so humble, he's actually hurting himself and not really helping anyone. I.e., being overconfident and arrogant is bad, but being so unarrogant that you actually are almost self-sacrifice happy and trying to kill yourself isn't helping anything either. There's a happy medium of self-worth that's not arrogant nor self-destructive. That's actually one of my favorite Doctor Strange stories, and that's actually the first story where he breaks his rules and delves into dark magic to defeat. I believe it's a group of elementals in Strange Tales Volume 2 that he fights, that he ends up having to use dark magic to defeat. But that's when the downhill spiral starts, because everyone saw how well that story did, and then went, oh, we can make Doctor Strange fuck something up and lose his powers over and over and over again. Derp. Anyway, Banana.
Yeah. Damn fireworks.
Somebody was doing that here too, and I don't know. It's fucking May. Why the fuck are you? Like, I understand maybe practicing 4th of July and all, but it's fucking May.
It would make more sense in June, right?
Yeah, like in like the latter weeks of June, I could totally see somebody being like, let's practice setting off fireworks for 4th of July to make sure we can do it right and whatever. Or maybe we just want to see some fireworks and whatever. That's fine. But like, it's fucking May.
I don't get people, man. I don't.
Yeah. Anyway, Banana.
Banana.
Morality, sacrifice, and this film. And what's the overall message? Well, I don't know, other than if WandaVision was about a woman whose vibrator broke, and this one may be about what happens to a woman when she waits too long to have kids, how it should have ended is going to have a field day with this one. I'm guessing one of their endings involves cats. And a frackin' sling ring. And yes,
Okay. Since you apparently didn't get any of the context of this movie, allow me to run you through the multiple arcs that we're going through this movie. Number 1, are you happy / what would you be willing to do to get the thing that will make you happy? Number 2, the grand calculus of the multiverse / greater good / sacrifice thing. And how, while that is circumstantially useful, it could very easily become a slippery slope and is probably not ultimately a good thing. And ultimately, better is the standard of somebody like Captain America in Infinity War when he tells Vision, we don't trade lives, i.e., find a solution that doesn't involve killing people, you dickhead. Number 3, to what degree are you willing to take corruption onto yourself to save the day or to get your end goal? In Wanda's case, it was obviously as much as necessary, and in Strange's case, it was obviously just enough to get the day saved. But that still sets up a downward spiral for Doctor Strange, which can be resolved probably when the Vishanti come to him, cleanse him of the Darkhold's darkness, but let him keep his third eye so that he can use it to channel their power instead of Chthon's power. And then he actually can become Sorcerer Supreme. But yeah, there not only were there arcs in this movie, but there were multiple arcs overlapping and existing simultaneously. And apparently every single one of them went right the fuck over your head. And I know I'm getting very angry with you, Gary, and again, this is not personal. I still respect you as a person. I just think you're very, very, very wrong here. But my dear gods, you are very, very fucking wrong here. Because you appear just to not have paid attention to the movie. I think because you were looking for ways to tear down this movie, and you just weren't paying attention to anything that didn't correlate to your arguments as to why the movie sucked. Whereas if you're willing to actually give the movie some kind of leniency and use your brain for it, not just against it, there are obvious answers to these questions if you're willing to fucking pay attention or to operate within the internal logic of the series. And also, I'm gonna throw this in your face again because it really does piss me off. I agree with you that people who don't read the comics shouldn't be allowed to just play silly buggers with the lore. But if you're going to use that point, if you are going to hold Jack Schaefer to that standard, and so much the better for all intents and purposes, because fuck her for what she did to WandaVision. But if you're going to use that standard, you can't all of a sudden turn off everything you know about the comics and become some angry normie when it's convenient for you. You can't just ignore the Book of the Vishanti and the Book and the Darkhold have existed for frickin' ever and are central to the mystical Marvel lore. You can't just ignore you can't just ignore the corruptive power and nature of the Darkhold. You can't ignore that Wanda in the MCU has been teetering between villain and hero this entire time, and you can't ignore obvious attempts to course correct America Chavez by taking away her ball busting, overly arrogant, Spanglish speaking, confrontational social justice protagonist ways by making her a more vulnerable character. And you can't ignore the attempts to minimize her character's involvement by turning her into a living MacGuffin, which, again, given the character we had to work with in the comics, is a better thing than playing her straight like she was in the comics. So yeah, no, you can't hold the movie to a standard while simultaneously failing on that same standard. And that is my main issue with you, is you failed to use basic logic to put 2 and 2 together and get 4, and you failed to pay attention to the lore when it was convenient for you, but you spontaneously remembered how to pay attention to the lore also when it was convenient for you. And information, Gary, is not there to simply be used when it's convenient for you. If you live by your knowledge of the comics, then you can also be rebutted by knowledge of the comics. Yo. Banana.
This movie's going to make a lot of money. All right, more crap. This ends our Disney MCU double feature. We started out with Moon Knight and we ended with Wanda and the Multiverse of Madness, guest starring America Chavez and Doctor Strange. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't,
No, Gary. I respect you a hell of a lot as a person, but you are very, very stupid in this particular instance. Learn better, Gary.
Okay. While I get things done, you wanna go get tissue or something?
Yeah, I should do that actually. I will be back.
Okay. All right. Live by the lore, die by the lore. I agree, Giant Turtle.
Yes.
Although I'm fully able to embrace adaptation as long as it stays within embraces the spirit. Unfortunately, a lot of things today of modern interpretations of adaptations don't embrace the spirit of things. Honestly, they actively avoid that, which I find is a big issue. Okay. Is Thanos a simp though? I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm reading your comment from earlier, Dragon Turtle. So hearing over how the Marvel Universe was almost destroyed by the most competent simp ever. Is he a simp? Yeah. See, I agree with that. Yeah, make it. Yeah, that rule makes sense, and I don't. It's weird how. Or explicit. Yeah, stayed to be different. Yeah, that I totally agree. It's weird how and Dawn and I had somewhat of a conversation like this before stream. Is that for some reason these series try to emulate other series that have kind of embraced originality or have done their own thing and have done really well with it, but they only do senpai. Okay. I call him Sam. Still badass, but a simp. Okay.
Okay, I have returned, and also apparently my cat has decided that she wants to be on stream today.
Well, she is your cat, so Diva.
Well, I did name her after an Egyptian goddess, and one does not simply name one's cat after a goddess and not expect her to develop an ego.
Oh, hey, we were just having a conversation. Is Thanos a simp?
For death, yes.
Yeah. Sorry. We were also, before we got sidetracked with the Thanos simp thing. We were talking about like adaptations and stuff. Yeah, copying something without understanding what made it good and messing it up. Yeah, in terms of adaptations.
See, this is my standard for adaptations, and as Brainstormer alluded to, we mentioned this before stream. But in order to justifiably change something, you have to understand what made it work to begin with, because you have to understand what parts of it are fixed and unmovable, and what parts are superficial enough to be free to be changed. But modern day writers look at IPs and internalize it through this weird artistic framework they have, whereby nothing has any intrinsic value. Everything is just circumstantial or consensus driven. Therefore, nothing has any intrinsic value to maintain, and therefore when we adapt things, we can just change whatever we want willy-nilly, because it's not as though it matters to anyone at all.
Yeah, and how many has that? And often I'm thinking, like, I'm sure we can bring up like a good 5 just off the top of our head of adaptations today that fail on every level.
Yeah, that completely bollocks it up by exactly that way of thinking, and it always comes back to bite them in the ass.
In the last year alone, too.
And what's more, it's not merely enough to have examples of that paradigm working, but we also have counterexamples, i.e., we have circumstances whereby when writers internalize the fact that maybe there's something inherent to this material that's worth adapting, like, for example, Sonic the Hedgehog, they benefit from it, because when they assume that there is something that the fans are likely to take issue with not adapting correctly, and they try to adapt it correctly, they reap the benefits of that. Conversely, when somebody goes to an IP assuming that, well, it's not like any of this lore actually matters, they always are blindsided by, oh shit, fans are angry because we disrespected something they liked. Who could have seen that coming?
Right.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and like it's almost Canadians copied bacon and made Canadian bacon. It's just ham, right? Like that's just what it is.
Okay, to be fair, for most of human history, bacon did not mean pork belly fat. The popularization of what we modern day Americans refer to as bacon happened in the late 19th and early 20th century, thanks to a guy by the name of Edward Bernays, who was tasked by a meat packing and distribution company to find them a way to market pork belly. And Edward Bernays, in his trademark father of public relations and propaganda manner, created the Americana. He essentially created through marketing the idea of the American breakfast that always starts with bacon and eggs. And apparently, he was so correct in this assessment. Like, I don't even think he knew just how correct he was. He became sort of by accident when he did that, because once people tried pork belly bacon, they found all other bacons to be inferior, and the rest is history. So
Right.
it's not even a case of we were all brainwashed by a guy who invented propaganda for a living. It's a case of that propaganda actually stumbled on something that people didn't realize, and now we realize it, so there's no going back. In a similar way to the fact that the 11th Doctor from Doctor Who said bow ties are cool, And marketing or no freaking marketing, a lot of the viewers saw that and went, you know what? Damn it, he's right. And some of us have never looked back. Ahem. Because some things are true, no matter how you come to them accidentally.
I still prefer regular tie, mainly because I personally don't think I could pull off a bow tie.
And whenever we meet up, I'm gonna have to work to disprove that, just on general principle. Because the one kind of supremacy I will allow is bow tie supremacy. Bow tie supremacy for the win.
The bacon genie can't be put back in the bottle.
No, it cannot.
Okay, so this is something Dawn wanted to cover. I'm not probably going to say much. Hopefully we can get through this quick. And we can end on something kind of positive or something.
Yeah. I very much doubt that either of these or any of these three topics are going to be taking up quite as much time as Gary's video did. And I only criticize Gary as much as I did because wrong is wrong no matter who says it, and also because I actually care about Gary. I would prefer a world where he didn't say stupid shit.
Okay, so Dawn sent this to me. It's from Vogue.co.uk. This is Why It's Time to Believe Amber Heard by Raven Smith, published May 18th, 2022.
Short version, the answer is no, and I resent your attempts to make me try and believe her. But we'll get into it.
Okay. Did you say banana article?
Yeah, it's force of habit at this point. Sorry. Go on.
Okay. Where to begin with the online cesspit that is Depp versus Heard, or Depp v. Heard. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks, or you just don't care, like I do, you'll know that the ex-spouses are back in court. Johnny Depp is seeking damages of $50 million after Amber Heard wrote and opted for the Washington Post in 2018, in which she spoke of being a public figure representing domestic abuse without ever explicitly naming Depp.
Okay, stop. I'm gonna put this to bed finally, and for hopefully the final time. It doesn't matter if she explicitly mentioned him or not, because number one, everyone was left to assume that she was referring to him, and moreover, and this is the part that actually puts the nail in the coffin, because I agree, if she was referring to somebody else, and Johnny took exception to it, that would be one thing. But not only did she take an op-ed and not de-ambiguate it enough so that people knew she wasn't referring to Johnny Depp, but when he took exception to it, she did not say, "Don't worry, Johnny, it's not about you," and she did not make a public statement of, "By the way, guys, I was referring to somebody else. I wasn't talking about Johnny Depp." But instead, what she did was every time somebody erroneously took the implication that she was talking about Johnny Depp, she doubled down on it. So whether or not she actually mentioned him in the text is meaningless, given that A, she never took steps to disambiguate it from anyone else, and B, when everyone in the media, including The Sun, but not limited to The Sun, assumed she meant Johnny Depp, she did not at any point try to correct the public record, either for intellectual honesty reasons of, holy shit, I'm getting somebody who didn't do anything accused of being a wife beater, or for her own sake of just, guys, that's not what I was referring to. But when Johnny personally took affront to it, she didn't try to clear the record for his sake either. So let's all be entirely honest with ourselves. If she meant someone else, all she would have had to have said is, "I meant someone else. It wasn't about Johnny. I'm sorry for any implication that it was about Johnny." If she was actually interested in being intellectually honest about it, or even just setting the record straight and not nuking his career. But instead of that, when he came to her with the implication of it really seems like you're talking about me there, babe, you might want to correct the record, she doubled down repeatedly. So much so that a large portion of her case in the Depp v. Heard debacle is trying to prove, in air quotes, that he was in fact abusive to her, which completely sections off the possibility in the algorithm of she wasn't talking about him and he just took it personally. Because if she wasn't talking about him and he just took it personally, she could have corrected the record for the public, she could have corrected the record for Johnny, and she could have not tried to prove him to be such when the following cases took place. Both the libel case from the Sun that printed him being a wife beater, and in this case where a large percentage of her case hinges on the fact that he actually was abusive to her. So no, you don't get to play the but it was ambiguous card and it only applies to Johnny in the most loose technical way, because any reasonable person, when faced with holy shit, my ex is getting accused of being a wife beater when he wasn't one, would have just gone, note for the public, this article is not about Johnny Depp. I am speaking either in the abstract or about someone else. That's all that would have had to have been done. And she could have said something to the Sun and all the other newspapers of like, you just accused my ex husband of being a wife beater when he wasn't, so knock it the fuck off. Did she do any of that though? No, she did not. She doubled down. And used the notion that he was a wife beater in her case. So you can fuck off with this ambiguity bullshit. Moving on though.
Right. The minutia. My what? You people gotta use such big fucking words, man.
Spell it.
Minutiae.
Minuet, I think.
Okay.
It means like over the top show, usually featuring puppets.
According to the Oxford Dictionary, it's small, precise, or trivial details of something.
Oh, minutia. Okay, that's forget my explanation then. Yeah, it's minutia.
That's how you spell it?
Yeah. It's
I've heard it said, but I've never. Huh.
Yeah, but it's one of those words that I've heard said, but I've never really seen written. Yeah, but it's minutia.
Huh. And something new every day. Right, the minutia being combed through at the trial has come to feel less like a lawsuit and more like a treacherous exorcism of the past, a thorough and painful raking over the coals of their 4-year engagement. Like, they were only married 4 years?
Yes.
Huh.
Modern day relationship plus Hollywood relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but as it happens, the minutia you're referring to happen to be the actual facts and evidence of the case. The actual like substance of the argument, because most people don't commence legal proceedings based on abstract notions. It's kind of necessary to go through the like evidence and or facts of the case, or the reasonable arguments contained within the case. And funnily enough, you're criticizing people for doing something that normally people, especially journalists, criticize the public at large for not doing, which is being hyper focused on details and facts and materia. Most of the time when aristocratic toffs criticize the public, they criticize them for being short-sighted and stupid and not caring about the facts of the case. But surprise fucking surprise, even when the public has shown itself to be more intelligent than you thought they were, this is also a problem. Because when the public doesn't pay attention to details you want them to pay attention to, that's bad. That's also bad, because you get to decide what's valid and what isn't, or somehow.
Moving on.
Yep, moving on.
The details of both Depp and Heard's testimonies are harrowing all by themselves. Gruesome, violent, and containing deeply intimate anecdotes about their relationship. Broadly speaking, witness testimonies can be persuasive, and with two actors in the dock, we can never be sure of the absolute truth. Still, despite the fact that...
Okay, I will... Go ahead. Sorry.
Still, despite the fact that London's High Court previously found allegations that Depp was a wife-beater to be substantially true, the internet appears to have overwhelmingly picked Depp's side. Last week, #Justice for Johnny Depp was trending on Twitter. Yesterday, it was Amber Heard. I remember seeing that on the list.
Yeah. Okay, but stop though, because a few things. Number one, I will give you to some degree that them being actors might play a role in skewing the data one way or the other. But if you allow their actors, therefore they might be acting, to be admissible to the courts of public opinion in this way, then you might want to ask yourself the question of, why is Johnny capable of making himself look sympathetic, but Amber is not? If they're both actors and therefore both being disingenuous or covering their asses, why is he so much better at covering his ass than she is at covering hers? So either you're accusing her of being a terrible actress, which is fucking hilarious, or we have to understand the notion that maybe they're not acting and Amber just really is that bad a person. Also, if she's acting, why is she portraying herself as a fucking Cruella de Vil-esque villain? Because every subtle flourish of her body language suggests to me she's acting like Regina George from Mean Girls at best, and fucking Cruella de Vil at worst. Like, if she's acting, then what she's portraying with her acting is a fucking villainess. And I have to wonder who that is supposed to be helping in a trial where she's supposed to be playing the victim. Also, fuck your naked appeal to authority that because the British High Court found something, it must necessarily be true. Never mind that the procedure of that trial is suspect. Never mind that the British and American legal standards are completely fucking different. And never mind that it's a completely separate issue as to whether the Sun can prove that Johnny Depp is a wife beater or not, as it is whether Amber Heard defamed her. Therefore, the facts material to the case and the logic material to the case are completely fucking different and have different burdens of proof in completely different legal systems when you consider that the British legal system tends to have a blanket believe all woman standard and will often refuse to admit evidence that contradicts that. So, yeah, assuming that A, the British legal system is inherently right, B, that the burden of proof is not different in this case as it was in that case, C, default appeal to authority, well, the authorities have already looked into it, and the authorities never get anything wrong, and C, they're completely different cases with completely different standards of evidence and completely different admissible evidence. You prick. Or moving on. God damn it! I can't get too many video responses lately. Oh, God damn it!
That's actually pretty true. Yeah. Okay. Go on social media, and the anti-Heard sentiment is palpable. The memes have been ferocious, sometimes consisting of a spot the difference comparison with domestic abuse victims. At other times, televised courtroom footage, has been appropriated to openly mock her appearance. It is plain misogyny. The company behind the makeup compact Heard used to hide her bruises even made a TikTok disputing her claims.
Because they were obviously wrong and they were obviously implicated in a lie in this instance, and they didn't want to be implicated in a lie. Also, how is it misogynistic to meme the shit out of Amber Heard, but it's never misogynistic to meme the shit out of Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Gian Gomeshi, O.J. Simpson? Remember for like 20 years, a standing meme was if the glove does not fit, you must acquit, because everyone thought that was ridiculous in the OJ trial. But I'm once again forgetting the rules of the aristocracy here, aren't I? When the memes agree with you, when they lavish your particular framework with all the legitimacy in the world, all of a sudden memes are a useful tool that everyone can apply and get behind. But when the memes show you to be categorically wrong, or at least mock your position with reasoned logic, usually, and a good degree of mockery, all of a sudden memes are the problem. But you didn't have any problem with the anti-Weinstein memes. You didn't have any problem with the anti-Epstein memes. And I'm gonna hazard a guess and say that if social media had existed during the OJ years, you wouldn't have had any problems with the anti-OJ memes, would you? But all of a fucking sudden, when the meme gods frown on you rather than smile, the meme gods are heretical demons that need to be fucking erased from history. Apparently, in this metaphor.
Heard is being systematically jeered at and ridiculed like a medieval criminal in the stocks as she catalogs historic abuse as she alleges rape. Have we completed the track of the severity of these allegations?
Because we live in a system that operates under the principle of innocent until proven guilty, and her attempts to prove Johnny Depp guilty have only shown her to A, possibly be the abuser, allegedly, and B, to be a terrible human being who is at the very least incapable of coming off as sympathetic, which is kind of a necessary thing to do when you're putting yourself at the mercy of public opinion and trying to play the victim in a very, very, very crucial way.
Moving on.
Yeah, banana.
Uh,
God damn it! And of course, right after this, we're going to do more commercial or trailers, so it'll be right back to the. Anyway, go on.
Okay. We understand that Depp fans will side with Depp, but even the less aggressively Depp-pilled of us want to believe that the Caribbean pirate is blameless, if not squeaky clean, then at least under the duress of drug addiction or acting out of character. That his violence can be somewhat explained away by a lapse of judgment or circumstance or both. We certainly don't want to believe that this entire court case is a precise and conniving operation in discrediting Heard, regardless of what she has to say, regardless of her truth.
No, okay, the issue is that the violence he is alleged to have committed is still hypothetical at this juncture, i.e., the issue under scrutiny at this particular moment is whether that violence occurred at all. And you, my dear, have just assumed by default that Amber Heard must be 100% truthful and in no ways mistaken. I am the king of never attribute to malice what can adequately be explained by incompetence. But one of the side effects of Hanlon's razor in this instance is even if she genuinely believed that everything she alleges happened to her, she could still be mistaken and incompetent. Even if she's not knowingly and willfully lying, she could very easily be mistaken because her own personal narrative of what happened is inconsistent with the evidence of what happened. And I find it hilarious that you're willing to put everything, your entire range of skepticism on Amber Heard expressing her truth, but you feel no empathy whatsoever for Johnny Depp expressing his truth when he says, "I did no such thing." Johnny Depp must be a malign monster because man bad, woman weak, and Amber Heard must be a pure saintly victim because man bad, woman weak, regardless of the evidence or the attempt to be a neutral or an impartial arbiter and simply look at the logic and the evidence. Which, if you do look at the logic and the evidence tends to lean more on the side of Johnny than Amber, even if she is delusional enough to think that she is in the right, even if she is obviously and patently mistaken at seemingly every freaking juncture. Moving on.
Right. I don't want to think about what this is saying to victims of abuse who are considering coming forward. And regardless of what Heard did or didn't suffer at the hands of Depp, isn't the relentless maiming of her a form of violence in itself? Is the pummeling by social media not a type of psychological assault? Are we not witnessing a modern-day witch trial?
No, we are fucking not. And speaking as an occult practitioner, my darling, how dare you appropriate the victimhood of my culture? And yes, I'm joking, but that needed to be said because I needed to, every fiber of my being was screaming to say that. But incidentally, mockery is not violence. And someone who is genuinely in the right need feel no insecurity as a result of mockery. If the mockery was misplaced or wrong, then all she needs to do is laugh at how backwards people's understanding of the case is and go on about her day. And incidentally, if she wants to come off as more sympathetic, maybe she should try acting more sympathetic. Given that she is an actor after all, it should be somewhere in her repertoire to portray sympathetic. Everyone at some point in acting school learns, how do I portray a good character or an evil character? But it seems like her acting repertoire only allows her to play very confused characters or very malign and malevolent characters. Because again, her body language and her tone of voice and everything she said thus far has screamed either Regina George from Mean Girls or Cruella de Vil. And thus, I have to wonder if her default mode is playing the villain, what does that possibly indicate about her character, especially when Johnny Depp has had no problem portraying himself as a sympathetic person, even assuming that both are bringing their acting skills to the table.
By the way, one of my favorite films of Johnny Depp isn't even Pirates of the Caribbean, which is kind of where I first saw him. It's Ringo. If anyone knows that movie, I salute you.
My favorite Johnny Depp movie is also a fairly obscure one. Although anyone who knows me and knows this movie probably isn't going to be surprised by my choice, but my favorite Johnny Depp movie is a movie he did in 1999 with Roman Polanski called The Ninth Gate, where he plays the antiquarian book dealer slash authenticator Dean Corso, tasked with finding the legitimacy of a 16th century grimoire called The Nine Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows. Again, anyone who knows me and knows my antique collecting ways or my occult fixation ways is probably not particularly surprised by this. Also, this is just a me thing, maybe, but I really hate. I mean, I love that Johnny Depp is successful because of Jack Sparrow, and Jack Sparrow is an amazing character and all that. And Johnny Depp's admitted impression of Keith Richards that he did to bring Jack Sparrow to life is flawless. But I really hate when he uses the fake British accent. And to be fair to him, Jack Sparrow is not the only time he's used the fake British accent. I think the first time he used the fake British accent was in a movie from the 90s, which was called Sleepy Hollow, where he played a version of Ichabod Crane, who was also a detective. He used the faux British accent in that too. I just really hate when he uses the faux British accent because he has a pretty good voice, all things considered, just by himself. And I would like for him to go back to not using the faux British accent again at some point. Also, Johnny, if you ever see this or any of my other defenses of you, of which there have been many, because I have a men's rights podcast and we've mentioned you many times. If you want to pay me back for all this defending of you that I'm doing pro bono, make a sequel to The Ninth Gate, please. I really want to see what Dean Corso does with the powers he's given by Lucifer at the end of the movie, now that he has them. Please. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Some weeks the internet is buoyant. All of us kept afloat by daft dresses and Kardashian weddings. Marvel actors saying they've never been in the same room. Other weeks it just feels too heavy. We're watching people actively seek out humor and domestic abuse as Roe v. Wade is terrorized by pro-lifers, and as we see yet more episodes of racially aggravated violence.
God damn it.
Aggravated violence.
Once again, my darling, you are presupposing that domestic violence took place when that is the exact issue under discussion. We are here to determine, both us here in the court of public opinion and the actual courts in the actual courtroom, are here to determine whether that domestic violence took place, period. You cannot presuppose that it existed simply because the woman is telling me that it happened and the man is telling me it didn't happen. All men are malevolent, all women are pure, therefore it obviously happened and he is obviously guilty, irregardless of what the court actually fucking finds. You can't do that, because your framework, my darling, and I would say this to any ideologue at all, is not the same as the entire goddamn universe. No matter what one perspective you hold to in this world, that one perspective is going to be finite. And the universe, even if it may in the most technical sense be finite, is fuck off large, and there's a lot of complicated shit in it. So some aspect of reality is going to be outside your purview of discussion. Even more so, however, if you limit your understanding of the world to a one-sided ideological moralistic framework. Because even on this planet, even on our tiny little corner of the universe that we have, there are more things in heaven and earth that are dreamt of in your philosophy, to quote Shakespeare. And that works with any philosophy, even my own. I'm sure there are things that I don't know that I don't know. There are unknown unknowns that I am unfamiliar with. I do strive to eventually learn the majority of those that I'm capable of learning. But that's the difference between someone who has a perspective or a philosophy and someone who has a one-sided ideological lens. A person with a particular opinion knows that their particular opinion is not the entirety of reality, and therefore they seek to broaden their perspective as much as possible, as often as possible. A person who believes one ideology in all creation has the one and only unvarnished truth gets their one and only unvarnished answer, and then proceeds to not look at any of the things that exist in addition to their perspective or that exist contrary to their perspective. But as it happens, my darling, feminism and the cult of believe all women is also a very flawed ideology, even as ideologies go. So even if we're allowing that one ideology might be the one true ideology. Yours is most definitely not it. Moving on.
We always rally, but right here, right now, it feels shit. I spend a lot of time wondering if everyone's lost the plot, if the erosion of empathy we see online has rendered us so inherently unkind as a species that there's no return. I don't want to despair for humanity. I want to believe that some of us are offline and mildly compassionate, or compassionate in a way that doesn't get tweeted about. That you're all out there being nice to each other, and I'm reporting on a tiny cluster of internet users with pitchforks.
Okay, I agree with you that generally speaking, the world could use a little bit more empathy. And following along that point of agreement that we have, the world could generally speaking use more empathy. I'm going to ask you a question. Where is your empathy for Johnny Depp? Why have you just de facto assumed that he is guilty by default because Amber Heard says so? And why are you verklempt by the notion that, or befuddled by the notion that Amber Heard actually needs to prove her case, and that Johnny Depp at least is entitled to innocent to proven guilty, even if he did it in a sane world, she still has to prove it, and he still is entitled to his day in court. And you appear to be frustrated by the fact that his day in court appears to be going his way, and her day in court is biting her in the ass because she appears to either be entirely delusional in that her personal narrative does not at all jive with the evidence or the logic that underpins the case, or that she is just very, very confused, or, and quite frankly, in this one instance, I find it to be more likely because we actually have given her a public hearing and she has done nothing but hoist herself by her own petard with it, that she might actually just be delusional enough to justify lying to everyone else, i.e., she still thinks of herself as the right person in the relationship and the right person in the instance, but she's willing to lie to get that point across because she knows on some level that she doesn't have enough of the evidence. Now, granted, giving her as much benefit of the doubt as I can, she might think that there is very little evidence because the circumstances just didn't allow for it, and therefore she needs to lie to make sure there's justice. But there's also the possibility that she is a manipulative cunt who is raking Johnny over the coals in a way that she actively knows will get him, because we all know collectively as human beings that we as human beings are more inclined to believe women as vulnerable and pure, and we are more inclined to believe men as malevolent and malign. Moving on, though.
Right. Though I felt myself veering towards it, I can no longer both sides to this. It's time to draw a line. It's time to believe women, all women. It's time to believe Heard. British courts believe Depp beat his ex-wife. What's stopping the rest of us? Wow.
The logic and the evidence appears to be stopping us. Also, it's funny that you can't both sides this anymore, because that seems to be why Amber Heard is getting sassed, is because most people in general are neutral on this issue, or were neutral on this issue. And then they looked into the facts material to the case and the logic underpinning both sides' arguments, and found Johnny Depp's case to be the more substantive and rational. But your approach seems to be from a moral and abstract perspective, whereby Amber Heard is the platonic avatar of all womankind, and therefore to disbelieve her is to somehow disbelieve all women. Thereby, hang the logic, hang the evidence. Morality is more important than logic and evidence, therefore we need to believe Amber Heard. Never mind what the evidence says, because I'm sure the evidence was just fake somehow. Well, no, fuck you, my darling. evil women do and have always existed. There have always been people like Elizabeth Bathory. There have always been characters like Helen Lovejoy or the Evil Queen or Maleficent. And there have always been female serial killers like the Angel of Death or Typhoid Mary or somebody like that. So given that bad women can exist and that some of those women can use victimhood as a weapon, we have to go by what the logic and the evidence imply. So yes, I agree with you. We can't both sides this and we shouldn't. But what we should do is fuck morality entirely. We should go with what the evidence and logic dictate. And what the evidence and logic dictate in this instance appears to be, allegedly, and I'm only saying that because the trial has not yet been concluded, I fully believe that Johnny Depp was the abused party primarily, and that Amber Heard was the primary abuser. I fully believe that. But, for the sake of, legal plausible deniability, I believe that Amber Heard is the abuser and that Johnny Depp is the victim because the logic alluded to by both parties and the evidence alluded to by both parties appears to suggest that she was the primary abuser, and moreover that she is a textbook fucking case of cluster B personality disorders, and in particular borderline personality disorder. And that Johnny appears to be just that nice a guy, that even all this fame and wealth that he has mostly gone, has mostly not corrupted him in any meaningful way, apart from perhaps him having a drug habit. Moving on now.
Also super extravagant stuff, but I mean that's pretty much.
Well, I mean, if every person on Earth had the clout and influence to be wealthy, honestly, if you don't be a little bit extravagant at that point, I would argue you're just not making full use of your abilities at that point.
So probably me, right?
You, sir, need to just have more respect for yourself and realize that you're worthy of good things. Just generally, because your humility, much like comic book Doctor Strange's humility, or better yet, in your case, Captain America's humility, frankly crosses the line from healthy and just crosses the line into downright hating yourself sometimes. And as your friend, I will not let that happen. I will kick the ass of that little voice in your head that says you don't deserve nice things. Someday.
All right, so Thor: Love and Thunder trailer. I think I sent this, right?
You did. Although I was going to if you hadn't. So yeah, it's a thing that happened in the last week that very obviously was a thing we should cover. So yeah.
Yeah. I've kind of made my just general thing. I've made my feelings on Taika Waititi's take on Thor very clear, and I'll get into it here. I'm on the fence about it. I don't downright hate it, but I'm not like an avid fan like Dalton is.
Yeah.
And I'll get into why I'm on the fence as we go on.
Mm-hmm. And as Brainstormer alluded to, my relationship to the Thor franchise is, I frankly hated the first two Thors. I hated the ancient alien crap. I hated the unnecessarily dingy and gray and overly pompous, Game of Thrones in space approach that we've seen later in movies like Denis Villeneuve's Dune or most recently Chloe Zhao's The Eternals. I hated the Clark's Law, magic and science are the same thing, just by different names bullshit. Or that magic users don't actually understand what they're doing and it's actually just science all along. I hated that shit. I wanted the Jack Kirby-esque, colorful, cosmic romp wherein Thor is an actual god. And while I agree that Taika Waititi's humor kind of overtook a lot of the more serious moments in the franchise, although that's mostly down to Marvel not knowing how to fucking let a serious moment be serious.
Again, I'll get into it. I'll get into it as we go on.
Yeah. While I agree with most of the criticisms that I think Brainstormer's going to raise, I think Thor Ragnarok was at the very least a necessary course correction, and I do think that it's possible that Taika Waititi, being Taika Waititi, and now having won an Oscar in the meantime, as well as written an entire TV show in the form of What We Do in the Shadow Show, which is Amazeballs, I think he may have gotten better as a writer and as a director in the meantime, so this movie might actually be better than Ragnarok, maybe. Now, granted, it has a little bit of an uphill battle because they're adapting the Jason Aaron run of Thor, which, ye gods, why? But they might actually make it work. Taika Waititi might actually be able to fix it. Who knows?
Well, they're also adapting the God Butcher storyline, which I've heard has like critical acclaim to it.
Like, okay, the problem with Jason Aaron's God Butcher storyline is very similar to his Last Days of Magic storyline when he was writing Doctor Strange. And honestly, I genuinely think that he probably pitched both of those as one storyline once upon a time, and Marvel just for some reason wouldn't let him do it as like a universe-spanning arc. Because when Jason Aaron wrote Thor and gave us the God Butcher storyline, he created a situation wherein Gorr, a disappointed adherent to a god, decided, fuck all the gods, I know they definitively exist, and I'm not okay with that, so I'm gonna fucking kill them all. Likewise, when he wrote a storyline in Doctor Strange known as The Last Days of Magic, he created a character known as the Empiricule, which is a member of a magic-using alien race whose race was destroyed by magic, and therefore he starts a cult wherein these science-based aliens go through the universe trying to kill all instances of magic, or all sources of magic. And I think the problems I have with the God Butcher storyline and the Last Days of Magic storyline might have worked if they had been one storyline instead of two separate ones. But that being said, I still hate both arcs on the general principle that the destruction of magic and mystical things will never be okay in my eyes. And anyone who tries to surgically remove magic or gods from existence will have to take it up with my ass before they are successful.
All right. Okay, before we start diving into all that is what I hate about Marvel movies. Nothing is serious. Everything is a joke, including the wrong things like humiliating the main character, not to properly bring them up later.
Yeah. To be fair, though, and this is one thing I did really like about Doctor Strange 2, they cut back massively on the humor and let a lot of the serious moments actually be serious.
I think the major issue for that still is, again, it's the weird is, and I've said this, is like I didn't really feel anything with this movie, and that's how I do gauge how effective the storytelling is.
Yeah.
One of the ways I gauge it.
Brainstormer is a crier, and if they don't manage to trigger his tear ducts, he doesn't consider the movie fully effective.
Or get any type of emotional response out of it.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was the thing that I think, again, as we mentioned earlier before, obviously, is the script could have used a lot of work, and also it's building things up for another thing, and it's not really letting it be its own thing,
Yeah. That being said, comparing Multiverse of Madness to something like Ragnarok or Guardians or even most recently like Shang-Chi, there are a lot of moments that could have been undermined by humor that in Doctor Strange 2 were not. So that is at least a plus, and I'm willing to bet we can thank Taika Sam Raimi and, more importantly, Kevin Feige's trust of Sam Raimi, because they've been friends for freaking ever, for that a lot of the serious moments weren't just uncut by jokes. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
We'll get into the trailer now, and we'll read comments halfway through.
Yeah, banana.
No.
Kids, hit the popcorn now. Let me tell you the story of the space Viking, Thor Odinson. He was no ordinary man. He was a god. After saving planet Earth for the 500th time, Thor set off on a new journey. Well, he got in shape. He went from...
Okay, I like this in the sense that it's that Taika Waititi is narrating the trailer while also being in the movie, because Korg is voiced by Taika Waititi. So that's actually kind of nice that the director is getting to narrate over his own movie because he's also a character in it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think I can appreciate. Oh, sorry, I'm a little tired. Thing I can kind of appreciate about this is it's more colorful than other Marvel films, and that's actually kind of a trend I've been noticing lately with a lot of these movies. More and more is they're getting more colorful compared to like other movies.
I think because the MCU has stopped trying to restrain themselves and actually are willing to let the comic book stuff be comic booky. Also, it is worth noting that I am very glad we didn't have to sit through this entire movie with him being Fat Thor, because I really hated the fat Thor choice.
I did watch a video that explained it, which I kind of understand what they were going for, but yeah, I still don't like it. Just I don't know, it was just weird to me.
I get what it means from a character perspective. It means he's depressed and he's wallowing because he fucked everything up, and he blames himself in large part for the snap, because if he had just gone for the head, Thanos couldn't have done the snap, and then all this could have been avoided. Now, granted, there probably would have been some other Deus Ex Machina that would have allowed the snap to happen, because I still maintain that probably the second or third timeline that Doctor Strange checked was the one in which he was able to make it to Thor in time and tell him to go for the head instead. But yeah, from an out-of-universe perspective, I get he was supposed to be depressed, so Fat Thor is the result of him being depressed. However, from an in-universe perspective, I want to once again point out that he is a god and has Asgardian physiology. There is no fucking way that any food on Earth is fatty enough that a significant consumption of it would result in Fat Thor, because his metabolism is fuck off high, because he's a warrior god alien from a warrior god alien race. And also, it's not like the Norse gods don't do their fair share of boozing, feasting, and carousing. That's kind of their whole shtick. So if Thor was able to become fat from feasting on any foods at all, it probably would have been something from Asgard. And what's more, you can't tell me he's never feasted more on Asgard than he did in the 5-year gap. So, number one, with Asgardian metabolism and Asgardian physiology, there's no food on Earth that could have allowed him to become Fat Thor. Number two, even if he just drank himself into being fat, the Aesir drink themselves into a stupor just for fun, because that's what Norse gods do. So,
Don't.
And further,
Don't.
I know, but any foods and drinks that would cause that would exist on Asgard and would be intensely more fatty and more boozy than anything you'd be able to find on Earth. So I don't buy Fat Thor from an in-universe logic. Banana.
Dead bod, the god bod. And after all that, he reclaimed his title as the one and only Thor. Oh, spoke too soon.
Jane?
Alright, so I have something to say about Thor's new. There is a YouTuber, and I don't know if anyone knows this guy. I watch him from time to time. Does video essays on stuff called Brown Table. And he talked about like the designs that were shown for the Marvel heroes for like Phase 4 and stuff, and said they had kind of an over-designed problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have to agree. Like, it just feels like there's a lot going on.
See, I like that because I see that as a sign of their leaning more into the weirdness of comics.
No.
And-
I get it and I understand it. It's just I do agree is that there's almost like not a point to focus on, you know.
Yeah, I guess, but I think
like it's like there's so many things to like look at. Nothing draws your eye to a certain place. Like it's like one of those paintings that look like splatters on a page, you know, like there's no rhyme or reason to it. Jackson Pollock.
That is an example of what you're talking about. Another good one would be Dada. It's very like Dada-esque.
Yeah. And there's always like, and other people have pointed this out, is like there's always like these weird like just lines everywhere on these suits, just everywhere, like rectangles and stuff.
Yeah.
And like again, like the movie could be good. I'm just more pointing that out, and it's just a small critique. I don't think it's going to overtake or take me out of watching it.
I think the abundance of geometric patterns and geometric shapes is a reference to Jack Kirby, because if you actually look at Jack Kirby's art, that is how he likes to portray textures, is lots of geometric patterns and squares and triangles.
I've looked at Jack Kirby art before. The thing is that there is a rhyme and a reason. There is a through line through it all. Like your eye is drawn to those specific
certain places that
full,
he's intending for you to be drawn. And yeah, I agree. They're not as good at it as Jack Kirby, but I appreciate at least the attempt to be Kirby-esque, especially because the first two Thor movies were basically anti-Kirby, and I hated it.
There was at least a consistency. I'm not really seeing it. And hello, Ed. Good to see you.
Hi, Ed. We usually end up going later than most people seem to stick around for, because we don't just cover one topic. We cover at least like 3 or 4 topics in a given live stream. Although usually, depending on how much we have to say, we end up finishing up earlier. But what the first topic tonight was our second half of our response to Gary from Nerdrotic, and then the second topic was a response to an article that was trying to defend Amber Heard with regards to the whole Heard v. Depp thing. And I obviously had a lot to say about that. Gulp.
I also just don't like. I just want to point this out. I don't like Thor's helmet here. I don't know. It looks stupid to me. It's like a chicken man. It's like a chicken man helmet. I think the problem for me is the faceplate.
Yeah, the like almost like Lecter-esque like face mask thing.
Yeah, like if you took that off and it's basically just like a regular Thor helmet, I would have been fine with that. And that's also the thing that bugs me too, is like for some reason these ever honestly, none of the Thor movies have allowed him to keep a helmet.
Well, I think that there's your answer right there. Is they keep looking for a Thor helmet that Thor can wear regularly, but they keep deciding, no, this doesn't look right. Like that's why every Thor movie has a different helmet design for him because I think the people behind the MCU are trying to find a helmet that looks good on Chris Hemsworth or looks good in his Thor design, and they just can't find one, so they keep trying new ones. Frankly, I would have been fine if he kept the helmet from that he had on Sakaar. The helmet he had on Sakaar was pretty good.
Yeah, that was actually really cool. Or the one from the first Thor that he had during like his initial crown.
Yeah, that was there for like 5 minutes and then gone.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Chris Hemsworth. Like his face or anything. It's just, you know, Thor has always worn his helmet, usually.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a catty little gay bitch for a second here. I acknowledge that Chris Hemsworth is attractive by like normal standards, but compared to everyone else in the MCU, he's not that hot. And I know that's heresy, but like from my perspective, he either needs to bulk up much more to look like Thor should look, in my opinion, or he needs to at least work out to such a point that his proportions are more correct. Because ever since the first Thor movie, I've always found his body proportions very weird. And also his facial structure doesn't really work with the rest of his physique, and it bothers me. My gold standard for attractiveness with regards to guys from the MCU is Chris Evans Captain America. Chris Evans Captain America is all the kinds of adorable. But and I know that seems counterintuitive because my standard is I like really big buff guys. That is my thing. But as far as comparing one buff guy to another buff guy, if Chris Hemsworth tried to pick me up in a bar, I would probably date him. But since he's in a universe with other very attractive people, I have to acknowledge that compared to all the other very attractive people in the MCU, at least the ones that I would find attractive, he's the least attractive, at the very least of the Chris's. Yeah, moving on. So, banana.
The old ex-girlfriend.
What's it been like? 3, 4 years?
8 years, 7 months, and 6 days. You know what yeah, right.
They don't really have anything to say.
I will say, I think Natalie Portman is more charming here than she ever was as Jane Foster in any of the Thor movies, which is at least a good sign, because she was the very first insufferable female character in the MCU. So I'm glad that her personality has improved. At least it seems like it has. Maybe now that Natalie has gotten herself some good nutrition, maybe she's not starving to death, and therefore she has a more likable personality. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say. So, I don't know.
No.
The only ones who gods care about is themselves. So this is my vow. All gods will die.
Okay.
I got things to say because I've been wanting to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Drag Turtle said something real quick. Hollywood doesn't like anything where they can't show their face and voice, and depending on who you're talking about, either find an excuse to get naked or cover up and pry objectification.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are actors who are willing to fully embody something like the guy, be fully dressed up head to toe, mostly. So there are exceptions. Kane Hodder, who plays Jason Voorhees, usually,
Mm.
or it's like primarily the guy who is Jason Voorhees, and
Yeah, with the guy who plays the Mandalorian mostly, or even to some extent Anson Mount, because he wasn't allowed to use his voice for most of either of his appearances as Black Bolt, and he still killed it with his face acting.
yeah, I've always been more of an advocate for physical performances than one of voice. And don't get me wrong, I love voice actors and stuff, and like, you know,
But you're being paid to use your whole body, so do it. And the best voice actors are ones that can't avoid doing a physical performance along with their voice. Like if you ever actually look at like Jim Carrey or Robin Williams in behind the scenes footage of him playing the genie, he actually got so into his physical performance that the animators used him as a reference for when they were animating stuff for Genie.
right. One of my favorite ones is Sam Witwer, who voiced Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, and I saw that. I saw the behind the scenes of him doing that voice, and just he went all into it.
Yeah,
and because he's also like a big fan of Star Wars too, and he's so like just excited to voice like Darth Maul.
Yeah, almost like the people who care about and like Star Wars should be the ones behind Star Wars most of the time.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say is like I am kind of disappointed that he isn't Beta Ray Bill, because I think he would have blown that out of the park. I'm cool with him. I'm cool with Christian Bale being Gore the God Butcher here, because I'll be honest, it looks like he's acting in a totally different movie, and that's kind of kind of a good thing here, because he's just this kind of level of intensity and what's the word dramatic.
Yeah,
that I think really helps. That will really help the movie.
The sense of grandeur, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I didn't notice this when I first went through this, but a lot of people have drawn attention to it, and I do think it might have been a deliberate choice. If you look, all the stuff that involves gods is very hyper colorful, very Kirby-esque, very hyper stylized. Everything that focuses on Gore or Gore's planet is black and white.
Actually, there was a theory I had seen of that where it mentioned that he basically takes like all the power and effectively deads it, like it kills it effectively.
Yeah, like as he removes the gods from existence, the color and more outlandish nature of the universe literally get almost like if anyone remembers that Powerpuff Girls episode with Mr. Mind, where he literally drains the color out of things and makes them like mime-esque as he goes. I think that might be what they're going for here. I didn't put two and two together with regards to that, but I think it might be deliberate, and it is an excellent choice to demonstrate why the universe needs gods and supernatural things in. So,
right.
Yeah.
I also, some people were bitching about the design because it's not as like comic accurate, but MCU designs are rarely comic accurate.
Yeah, they always cut some kind of corners. I'm grateful with it.
I am fine with this simply because Christian Bale, while I do think he could act under prosthesis and stuff, and he does have some prosthesis and stuff if you really pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of better that he has more or less just paint on him than anything else.
Also, it might be consistent with the themes, with the aforementioned color versus sepia thing. If he is supposed to look normal to the point of being forgettable, and everyone around him is larger than life, e.g. a god, or i.e. a god, then that makes perfect sense. If not only do things become less colorful when he kills them, but they also become more normal when he kills them, that is a good choice. It reminds me a little bit of Halloween Town 2 Calabar's Revenge and the Gray Spell, how the monsters are turned to normal people when under the aegis of the Gray Spell. If they're doing something like that here, like the dead gods become more and more normal human looking as they die, that would be a very good choice.
Yeah. But he's like, I love Christian Bale here just because like he has such a presence to him.
Also, I just came up with this in my head. Gore the God Butcher is the cosmic killjoy. Because he wants to take all the color and wonderful things from the universe and turn it lifeless, gray, and normal. He's literally the embodiment of the grim, dark, normal, nihilistic aesthetic.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that works so well.
Although,
For the God Butcher, cosmic killjoy.
Also, granted, he is technically an uber. Well, no, there's someone who acknowledges the existence of gods, but actively denies them.
I think that might be a misotheist you're thinking of, maybe. Or an apotheist. I think it's one of those two.
Yeah, someone who knows the gods, who either believe or knows the gods exist, but
willfully chooses to deny them any sort of faith or any sort of
worship.
It's the more literal translation of anti-theism, i.e., not someone who simply actively destroys the belief in gods, but also actively chooses to destroy gods. Anti-theism.
Yeah. They're probably not going to touch on that, obviously, just so they
although if they do, good for him or good for them. But I'll be satisfied as long as my Gore the God Butcher embodiment of realism and nihilism, or Gore the God Butcher cosmic killjoy theories are correct.
Yeah.
And if both of them are correct, I will be over the moon. So yay.
Shall we?
Banana.
Banana.
I was going to say that was very, very impressive what you did back there.
It's just my first bad guy.
You never forget your first. You are not like the other gods of kill.
Yeah, I actually recently watched a video from the Russian comic book geek who did the audio dub of Gore the God Butcher and God Bomb storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Both phenomenal in turn. I'm talking about the videos, actually.
Yeah, the Russian comic book geek is excellent. In fact, I would go so far as to say his adaptation of The Sound of Her Wings, the 8th issue of The Sandman, is better than the version that we got in the Audible original audio drama portrayal of that.
Mm-hmm. I do
not least because Kat Dennings was not a good choice to play Death, but that's beside the point.
I do love his rendition of Moon Knight because he does a lot of those.
And he actually did an adaptation of my favorite standalone Doctor Strange story, which is Doctor Strange into Shambhala. Excellent.
It looks fun. Like it looks like it's really going out there. Like space, cosmic trotting, adventuring.
Yeah, I can totally imagine Taika Waititi going, "Oh, I can't believe I got away with that. I'm going to double down on it."
Yeah, and Christian Bale is just acting his fucking heart out here.
Yeah, I haven't seen a Christian Bale this like psychotic and sociopathic since Patrick fucking Bateman, which is an excellent choice to go with for portraying Gore the God Butcher, especially if he is supposed to be the enforcement of all things normie, or the cosmic killjoy, as I've dubbed him.
Also, I hope we get his story, like his backstory at least, because that's an integral part to that enforces his character and his.
Yeah,
belief.
I imagine we will, because the first thing we saw of him in this trailer is the speech of the only ones that gods care about is themselves, so my vow is that all gods will die. I imagine that line of dialogue is taken from the scene where he explains this is, Thor or somebody else asks him, why are you doing this? Why are you killing gods? And then he goes into his backstory or tries to show it like Thanos did in Infinity War or whatnot. So maybe that world that is, completely grayscale and sepia,
Is the remnant's home?
It's his home planet, and this is what happens.
If I remember correctly, the planet that Gore is from, which is like a very old, very forgotten planet, and his people really have nothing. It's a very barren wasteland of a planet where there's very little food, very little water. There's always sun. There's never it's actually a thing with their faith, their religion, that when the night sky comes, that is when the gods will allow people to ascend. It would basically be like their
apotheosis.
No. Rapture.
Yeah. Which that description would be consistent with the grayscale environment we see him in. So.
But that never really happened, and he lost his wife, who was pregnant, to a rock slide. Lost his mother at a young age due to an animal attack, tearing her apart at the altar of a god.
Mm-hmm.
And he lost his son, who died in his arms just by malnourishment and dehydration.
So in other words, he spent his entire life waiting on the gods to come and save him, and the gods just appear to not give a fuck. So he decides, you know what, fuck it.
Well, two celestial entities fell to his planet fighting, and one had asked to help him, asked for help, and that just kind of made him snap because these were divine beings.
Yeah, you dare to ask me for help? Where it's basically a translation of the old song from fuck.
And also, if I remember correctly, Gore has a special place in his heart for Thor, in the comics at least, because he was previously injured by Thor, had him near death, and thus Gore became inspired, became more driven in his quest, more calculated, and thus even planned to leave Thor alive to be the last god to kill.
Yeah. You've impressed me, and your prize is I'll kill you last, basically. But I wish I could remember that fucking song. That song that goes, I found God on the corner of First and da. And he said, ask me anything. And I said, where were you? And I what the fuck is that song called?
I try not to stress about it at the moment because it's just going to go farther and farther away from you.
Well, but it's so applicable to Gore's story because it's basically exactly what he said to his gods.
No, and if you try to focus on it too much, you're not going to remember it. So if you let it come naturally.
All right. I was kind of hoping that somebody in the chat would be able to figure out what that song is, but.
Anyway, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Banana.
Banana.
You have something worth fighting for. Let's see who you are. And take off your disguise. And flick. Oh.
Yay, Olympians confirmed, which means there are other gods than just the Norse in this universe. Yeah. Although, to be fair, that's already been confirmed because we got the Egyptian gods in Moon Knight, but this is the first, like, big screen confirmation of it. But yay, polytheism confirmed. And yes, I know, technically, because there are more than one god in the Norse pantheon, that would still be polytheism, but I prefer universes where all the gods exist.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, banana.
Banana.
All I can think of is that.
Shall we help him? Eventually. Great.
Yeah, not okay.
It's gonna bother me. That song is gonna bother me for the rest of the night until I can figure out what it's called. And then I'm gonna spam it to Brainstormer's Twitter, and he's gonna be like, "Oh, this is the song you're talking about." And if I know Brainstormer, it's gonna inspire him to write something into a story because it's Brainstormer. I'm also probably gonna bother you and Ultra Boy about it later, Dragon Turtle, when I figure out what that song is called. Because I've heard it so many times and I've listened to it so many times that I can't for the life of me remember what the song is called.
Right. I mean, okay. So again, I'm still on the fence just because, you know, I'm still worried that it's just and I don't even think it's really Taika Waititi's fault. You know, it's gonna be too obsessed with jokes and stuff.
I don't know. I think because again, Taika Waititi has since won an Oscar and gotten an entire show's worth of practice.
No, I meant executives at the very least.
Right, but I think he's going to get better at balancing it, and I think the seriousness of Gore's arc might be able to counterbalance it even, and maybe there'll be a commentary about this in the movie as he drains more and more energy from the gods. The world will get more and more grounded and serious.
Oh, by the way, I don't really have anything to say about Jane Foster at this moment, just because we don't really see a lot of her in here.
Yeah, I could easily imagine her upstaging him, but I see no major evidence of that at this particular juncture. And because Stormbreaker exists in the MCU now, the main problem with with Jane Foster Thor is dealt with already, in the sense that in the comics she was taking away Thor's power from Thor. But now, because he has Stormbreaker and she has Mjolnir, they both can simultaneously have the hammer. And therefore, there's no reason to fucking bitch about it. Other than the fact that she, for some reason, starts calling herself Thor. Which is still stupid.
I think someone called her Thunderstrike now.
Yeah, or just Lady Jane, Goddess of Thunder, would be plenty enough.
Or Thunder Goddess.
Yeah, or how just Thunder would be nice, but like
I think that's actually taken.
Probably.
Anyway, with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidase, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
good.